Okay, our first appointment this evening is the Conservation Commission to discuss proposed projects.
I'm Greg Simcoe, member of the Conservation Commission and the acting chair of the Trails Committee, and these two projects are trails related. And I believe Susan has given you the information I sent along a couple of weeks ago, outlining what we're here to talk about. It's really two projects, and the purpose of the projects is to expand public access to conservation properties in Kingston. And the first one is at the end of Sargent Road, where there's access to Sargent Conservation Area and E.T.'s Landing. And these two properties add up to about 172 acres. There's lineal roads through the properties, excellent views to Powwow River, but the properties are pretty much underutilized. They don't have access like you would have, say, Tucker French, which is a highly utilized conservation area in town. So what we'd like to do is to create a parking lot at the end of Sargent Road where there was a large turnaround some years ago. Rich St. Lair told me he used to plow it. It's somewhat got like a pavement down under there, but it's all overgrown now. But it would make a great place for a parking area. And currently, there's the only other access point to Sargent is a power company roadway, an easement for the power company, but that's quite narrow and it really doesn't offer any parking possibilities. And the current access to E.T.'s Landing is through a right-of-way, which you basically walk by somebody's house to access the property. I find it very uncomfortable to access a property that way. It seems a little bit strange, but also you have to park on New Boston Road, which is kind of a busy road and traffic is somewhat fast there, so it's a bit of a safety issue for children getting out of cars and pets, etc. New Boston Road, maybe not the best option. Do we have a picture of that?
No.
Okay. In the information I sent, there is a picture of that right of way on New Boston Road. So the Sargent Road access would really be, here's the, it's probably too small for you to see, but in the presentation that I put together, there is a picture of the New Boston Road access. You can see that the house here, I think they've got an outbuilding and a right-of-way passes right by it.
This is right by John's Auto. It's right at the end of the road where John's Auto is. There's Sargent Road goes dead ends. There's a big berm of dirt there now. And we would open up the berm and, well, you can go ahead and explain
Sure.
a little bit more about the parking area.
Yep. The parking area would be, it's about 60 feet by 45 feet. It would be fairly easy to clear. There's no work in wetlands required. I've contacted New Hampshire DES, no permits required. We've also been in touch with the Nature Conservancy. They're the easement holder for that conservation property. We've walked the area, looked at the proposal that I have put together for the parking, and their manager, I don't know what Krista's title is, but she's given the approval and she's enthusiastic about expanding the access to this area because it's such a large property that we have that could be better utilized and have better access.
I'll just mention that we've been looking for access to E.T.'s Landing for some time, which is a beautiful trail. Walk alongside the river and goes out to a beaver dam and just a beautiful view of Powwow. We have benches there that the Boy Scouts have put, but there's no access except through somebody's backyard. So we've been looking at Sargent for a while. And there's actually, when you enter Sargent through this parking lot, there's a little woods walk, then it opens up into the big power easement. And then there is a road that goes right over to E.T.'s Landing. So it's another quarter of a mile walk from Sargent to walk through somebody's backyard. And I mean, it's really weird, because you're really walking down his driveway, right across his backyard, past some raised planting beds and past his tool shed, and even then, you're still on his property for a little while before you're actually on the town property. So that is a right of travel way, quote unquote, but it's very uncomfortable and most people don't use it because of that. So we're trying to, this is just up the road a half a mile, we're trying to.
The person that owns the house hasn't impeded your progress, right?
No.
And he doesn't have any shacks or sheds or anything on the right of way,
I
correct?
don't believe so. I've never walked that right of way. I've just looked at it from the road and
Okay.
not wanted to access the property that way. Instead, you can drive to the end of Sargent Road now, where it's blocked by a big pile of dirt. You're parking right next to John's Auto Salvage. It's a narrow roadway. There's room for maybe 1 or 2 cars. It's kind of a muddy, nasty place to park. And I always worry that I'm going to come back and I'm going to find the wheels missing from my car or something, that they decided to scrap it.
Cars would put in the crusher.
Just don't go at night. As long as you don't go at night, you should be fine.
Yeah. So the plan would be to remove that earth berm. There used to be a metal gate there, but the dirt was placed to really block access more effectively. And that wide area would be cleared, stripped down a few inches, the old pavement would be taken out, all the roots of the saplings would be cleared out. Rich estimates it would take about a day of the road crew's time to do that, and then some fresh gravel would be put down. We'd install a gate, a new metal gate, at the end of the parking area that would block vehicle access into the site. It would also allow us to have access for maintenance purposes. Right now, we can't get over the berm with a gator or a tractor or anything. It's impossible to get around there. The parking area would have maybe some logs or rocks around it just to define it, make sure nobody backs into the swamp. And then we install a game camera just to monitor the site. Because it is a bit off of New Boston Road, it's a little bit out of sight. So we figure it'd just be good to put up a game cam and keep an eye on things. And then, as Evie mentioned, we're thinking about ways to maybe expand the site, but certainly we would map the trails that are there now. We publish a map on the town website, and we put up a kiosk there with a map to show where you go, what the trails are. So that would be the basic plan. The Conservation Commission has already approved the estimated cost for the gravel, the gate, and the game cam coming from the Forest Fund. And Rich has said that he would help us procure the gate. He knows somebody that can make it for a very reasonable price. And he said he would use the road works department to strip that out, take out the gravel, put fresh gravel down. And that was our thoughts. Questions, comments?
And how much was that gonna cost?
Is about a total of $1,000 to do this.
That's assuming he gets the fence donated and that the town pays for the laborers to do the work and all that.
Yes, yes. It's that's not counting the cost of the road crew's time. But the material costs for the gate, the gravel, and the gate cam would be around $1,000 income from the forest fund. But it would provide much better access, parking for 5 to 6 cars at a spot that is removed from John's Auto Salvage, and would also give us access for maintenance purposes. It would be a big advantage.
What kind of condition are the trails in that property? Are they
They're-
fine? Or?
They're basically old roads. You can drive them with a pickup truck or a gator or a tractor. Right now, I've been in there to remove illegal deer antler trap. And I drove in my 4-wheel drive vehicle. The power company takes us to the site and drives their equipment through the area. So the trails are pretty wide and open at this time.
Other questions?
already conserved property. All right.
But does that mean we don't have a decision on whether you go ahead with that or not? Is that what you're telling me?
Well, because it involves modifying the end of a street and involves the highway department, we thought it was really important to inform you of what our plans were and ask the board's permission to go ahead with the project. But we're not asking for any initial monies.
It's not always about money. It's about liability, exposure, monitoring. You say 5 or 6 cars, what if it takes off and now you've got problems with abandoned cars dumped down there? I don't know. If we have 172 acres of beautiful land and you use it, the people use it anyways. So, what, you want to be boats down in there? Is that what you want to come down in there?
No, this is just parking to walk the trails.
It's a trailhead.
And there is access now, but the parking situation is not terribly good. And as the Trails Committee, we have difficulty accessing the property for maintenance purposes. There's old items that have been dumped in there, and it's difficult for us to use the current access to remove those items and dispose of them properly.
There's also a fair amount of illegal target shooting that goes on in the power easement. We think that public access to hiking trails would deter that as well. It's a big piece of
You think
conserved
you would
property.
deter it, really, as opposed to, promote it? I mean, someone gets shot down there because someone's got target practice,
It's
and they've
been
been doing it for 40 years, the town's liable. I don't know, I'm sorry to be a wet blanket, but that's not our job as a selectman to think of the worst things that could happen. And could it be worse than what it, it's not been a problem now.
Well, we're gonna post it too, which hasn't been posted because it's been so underutilized. We've done several cleanups of the Boy Scouts there, and it's much better than it was. So I'm just thinking that more people walking the trails, I think, will definitely deter the kids that are going out there.
Is this where Mr. Wickham used to live?
I'm sorry, I passed.
Was this
That's
where Mr.
nearby.
Nearby
Yeah.
Mr. Wickham's house. Remember, I know he doesn't live there now.
Warren Wickham's
Right.
property. Warren Wickham's.
Warren, thank you, I remember his first name.
It adjoins that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And the Briggs property. So-
Wayne Kinney's is in there, the pit we talked about one
Yeah.
night. Wayne Kinney's is right directly ahead.
Okay.
Off the main road going in.
Yeah. But I think a lot of those problems that you mentioned, they exist now.
They do? There's no question
I
about
don't
it.
think this would appreciably change those potential issues.
I think a lot of the shooting has stopped.
Yeah.
Warren would call me just about every Saturday and Sunday to let me know they were out there with an AK-47 or something, so we would get out and ask them not to shoot down there because people were walking on the property. So that seemed to go away, although they do dump stuff down there.
2-3 years ago, we were out there doing a monitoring walk of the property, and there were a lot of broken clay pigeons, shotgun shells under the power lines. But the last times that I've been in there, I haven't seen anything new like that. So I also believe that that kind of misuse of the property has been reduced.
So what's the plan for the existing points of access? Are those gonna be sealed up better and direct people to this parking area? The reason I ask is because if there's an informational kiosk that states that there can't be any shooting in these areas and these are the rules for access, you kind of want to take away the other points of access so that everybody is kind of entering from the same spot and seeing the rules to utilize the property.
Well, the other access point for Sargent is the power company's easement roadway, and that has a gate on it.
That's accessible, and it's not a bad road, but it's right beside, I don't know the woman's name that lives, I think you know her.
Sandy Whitney lives to the right,
Yeah,
and the other people to the left.
and there's nowhere to park there, and that's a huge gate,
a sign on that gate stating that people, for access to the
Yeah,
property,
that's a
go
good
to
idea.
this area.
We can put a sign out on the road, we'll publicize it on the website, and we now have the shelf downstairs with all of the maps for town properties. So hopefully people will begin to use it and enjoy it.
You definitely don't wanna take that gate down, because you'll have dumping in there.
No. Gates are
But
good.
you're right, all the points of access should have the same type of signage indicating the proper uses or the things that you can't do on the property. So the easement that's there on New Boston Road, there should be signs as you enter that way, also indicating the same kinds of things.
I think the nice thing about this is no one really has a reason to dump there, since John is
Yeah.
taking.
It's on your way in.
That was a problem before, they would go right to the end and dump. Now, he's given those dumpsters in there and takes care of that. That's why we're finding fewer and fewer products dumped in the woods. So I think, yeah, it's gonna work good. The only thing I'd suggest is we should probably get down there and speak to the owners and try to work with them so it doesn't impede what they're trying to do to help us. And to work through a plan down there.
As an official site walk or just something that we do informally as a conservation commission?
I would say informally,
You can come along.
sure. We've got to discuss that other issue with him anyway.
Yeah.
To make sure everything is off the town property. So it'd be a good time to take a walk with him and just tell him what your thoughts are and he'll work with you. I mean, he's very pro keeping things out of the woods.
Good.
So we're gonna hear the whole proposal and go back to each one, or we can go as we go?
Yeah, why don't
Hear it all?
we, yeah, why don't we, and then we'll decide.
Okay. The other project is on a piece of property called the Manual property. I don't know if you know where that is. Do you know where the Webster Conservation Area is? The dog park? If you continue past the dog park, the first turnout to your left, that's part of the Webster Conservation Area. That's owned by the New Hampshire Society for the Protection of Forests. The second parking area is part of this property, the Manual property. And as you continue along Green Road hooks to the left, Lake Road goes straight. All along that section of roadway, even after the road turns left, that's all part of the Manual property. I have a large print of the plan for that property here.
The Manual property is an LCHIP property, it's town-owned, conserved, permanently conserved property.
It was purchased in 1991, and now the LCIP program is no longer, but the properties are overseen and monitored by the Office of Strategic Initiatives in New Hampshire. And us. And I've spoken with the manager of that office, Steve Walker. He's been to this site and walked it with me this spring, and he's in favor of this project. And what we'd like to do is to provide an access to Country Pond where people could put in kayaks, canoes, just a car top boat launch. There's a perfect spot for it that's already in existence. It doesn't require removing any vegetation from the shoreline, any modification of terrain. It's there and the property is open. Anyone can go and use it now, but good luck finding it. Because I think very few people in town even know that this property is a conservation property and that there is access to Country Pond in that area. Now, there's no other public access to Country Pond in Kingston, and in Newton, boat ramp there, the parking is by resident permit only, so
You mean they don't share?
they do not share.
Bad boys.
They do not, and 2/3 of this pond are in Kingston, and we pay for water testing, and yet we have absolutely no public access to this entire pond.
So they have what we give them for nothing?
Well, they also support
There's a
our...
method to my madness.
Okay, but Evie didn't tell you the whole story. The town of Newton has contributed $2,500 this last year for our Lake Host program, where we do voluntary boat inspections at the town ramp. And Kingston Conservation Commission pays for that to be done at Great Pond in Kingston. So Newton is contributing a lot, more than the cost of the water testing. The water testing this year is only going to be $600, and Newton's contributing $2,500 to the Lake Coast program.
And this is all relatively new. There wasn't any Country Pond Lake Association up until when did you start? 4 years ago?
Almost 4 years ago.
So this is all relatively new, but there's just no access in Kingston to this pond. The only access is on the sort of the north end, and it's all private property. So this is a piece of wonderful town property, and you can give them a little history on why we haven't done this before.
Well, you might be surprised to know that there's 1,500 feet of frontage on Country Pond in this property. Some of it is swampy. Like, it's about 560 feet is more or less a swamp and unusable. But there's another 970 feet that's really nice shoreline. Provides nice views, great place for fishing. I have seen some kids out there fishing from this spot. But the pictures, we could pass those around.
This is, we could put a little trail there. There's a lovely walk up that shows views of the lake. And this is a photo of the area that you could offload your boat. We have plans for parking, which Greg will tell you about. But there's plenty of room to drive in there, take your boat off your car, and then go park. So, and there's a good little boat launch right there, just enough for one boat at a time.
So this parking area is where the clearing is now that you're proposing?
Well-
You go down and you hit a spot where there's clearing on the left. Is that where you're talking about putting it?
That's where the launch would be. But the issues are that Green Road near the launch, it's a Class 6 road. It's not maintained by the town. The roadway is narrow, and there's really no parking possible along the road. So if you park a couple of cars at this launch site, you fill it up quickly, and parking could easily spill over to the roadway, and that would create a problem for the Murphy residents at the end of the road. So what we were thinking when we were looking at this plan some weeks ago is that that second parking lot that you pass, which is part of the manual property, gives access to Webster. It's pretty large. You can park a dozen cars there.
Yeah, you would think it's like past the dog park and go past two little entrances and you get to a big area
Yeah,
at
on
the
the
end
left.
of the Webster.
Yep.
Yeah, just before the road comes.
And then
you know.
there's the private property side when you go back.
Yeah, and that big parking lot would be ideal.
My concern about that property is traffic going both ways on Green Road because it's so narrow.
Right.
I mean, you go.
There are a couple of opportunities where you could pull off and let traffic pass. What we would do is we would designate the launch site as loading and unloading only. So you drive there, drop your kayak off, you go back, and you park at the large parking lot where there's plenty of room.
Being
And-
that it's only car talk, I don't envision this to be terribly busy. I think if you have two cars there on any given wonderful day, I'd be surprised. It's out of the way.
It's not the parking area I'm concerned with, it's the path in and out.
Yeah.
Because last week the water was right up to the edge of the road. If somebody goes off that least little bit, they're gonna be towed out.
Mhm.
You know, it's swampland.
Yeah. Well, so what we would be doing really is not modifying any of the terrain there, but creating an awareness that the property is there, that people can use it, putting up the proper signage to regulate its use.
Get cars in that load, offload boats, but I mean, no leveling of terrain or anything like that.
Yeah. And the town might want to mark that unmaintained section of Green Road with some type of designation saying it's Class 6 road, not maintained, something that would maybe minimize the liability of somebody driving down that road. There's no reason that you can't drive down there today.
It's a good
Anybody could. they do about the property. Because that section of road is all on the town's property. There is a right-of-way owned by the Murphys, who have the property at the end of that roadway, but this is all on Kingston land.
This is another underutilized property that would give us access to Country Pond. It's been, Greg said he talked about it a couple of weeks ago or something, but this has actually been on our back burner for about 2 years, and we've been sort of working our way to try to understand the roads, and you've talked to Rich, right?
Yeah, we've talked to Rich about the roadway issues, we've talked to the Office of Strategic Initiatives about the site, and we also wanted to get the board's input on any concerns so that we could decide what would be the best way to manage the property, to limit the access, the proper types of signage. So we're looking for inputs here as well as permission. And another thought was it might be necessary to have a site walk to look at the actual conditions there, to think about it. It's hard to visualize from the pictures until you've been there. But it is truly a beautiful site, it'd be a great resource for the town, and that's why we're enthusiastic about trying to do something here, to promote the access.
Yeah. Chief Briggs suggested the sidewalk at our last meeting.
And to invite the neighbors as well.
Yeah.
So is that gonna be a year-round use for like ice fishing and stuff?
I think because of the Class 6 road issue, you would not want to have it be year-round, it would be seasonal. That's just my thoughts. Because the town's not.
Probably a better road in the winter than it is the summer after the rains.
That's true.
You better bring the bug spray this time. It's gonna be thick with mosquitoes back there. But where you access the water there, it's really nice and shallow for quite a ways out, sandy bottom. One of the pictures in the presentation shows the view from Country Pond. It's in a nice little cove, and it's not far from where you would access the Powwow River. It's kind of going around a point, and then you can access the Powwow River from there,
Yeah.
which is a really great place to go and paddle.
I'd recommend a site walk and to invite anyone who wants to go. I think we should post it. And you should post your meeting. And to invite neighbors and anyone that wants to go and view it. And I think take that information back to a meeting.
Greg has access to all the names of the neighbors through Country Pond Lake Association.
You thinking a Saturday morning or Monday before?
I would suggest a Saturday if that's good for all. If not, because if you want the neighbors involved and they're working or whatever, pick a day that would work for all. I would think.
I'm here this Saturday and gone next too, so
Well,
I don't know if we can get it together or not for this Saturday, or I can get with Ray and go some other time anyway. I've been down there, so I know what it looks like.
I have no idea. I'd like to go take a look. This Saturday could work if we do it at 9 o'clock or something.
When?
9 o'clock this Saturday?
This Saturday?
Does that work?
Do you have enough time to notify the neighbors and to post it?
It's hard to post it.
And you have email, right? You have
If we're entirely on town property, why do we have to notify them?
I think it.
Yeah.
No, let them know, just be nice.
Yeah, I would, but I mean,
I think there's also concerns that they may have that we're not aware of, issues with the road, issues with people coming down, it's things that we don't know as people who don't live there all the
I
time.
think there's enough time. You could notify them tomorrow.
It's like posted as a meeting before.
There's only 4 neighbors down there, right?
Yeah, and the launch site is very close to a boundary with the Rogers family. That would be one of the concerns in doing something to develop the site, putting down either logs or rocks to make sure that nobody encroaches on the Rogers property. You could pull in there and easily just drive a little too far and be on their property, and we don't want that to happen. We want to be sure that they know that.
And that site walk would answer a lot of their concerns and questions if we walked down here and kind of looked it over and told them what the plan was.
Should we contact a couple of the neighbors and make sure that they can make it before we set it in stone, or?
It's up to the board, how they wanna do it.
I would say, just from the Conservation's Commission's perspective, you want neighbors to be in favor of this and having eyes down there and being supportive of this. And if they don't feel like they were given any input on it, it was just rammed through, that's probably gonna create acrimony that's gonna last for a long time. So I would say that the more people you can get involved abutting that, the better.
And maybe you go for next Saturday, and you and I could go one day this week to look at it, so.
Well, the next day is Kingston days, so.
Oh, yeah. One after that even.
Anything works for me, I'm here.
Well, why don't we do this? Why don't you see who you can get a hold of for the neighbors and let us know by Wednesday? Let Susan know, and she'll
Okay.
let us know if it's on or not.
To propose this Saturday?
Saturday for 9 o'clock.
For 9 o'clock, is that okay with Kingston days?
Yeah, Kingston's
Kingston's
next
the
week.
week after.
Following week.
Oh, the following one, okay.
Yeah, so it either have to be this Saturday or two weeks.
Got it.
Yeah, Kingston days is until the 7th, 8th,
Yep.
so it's like.
Okay.
Any other questions?
What about Sergeant?
Yeah.
I'd like to walk
Same
home,
time.
I'm not,
We can do both then.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, look at the parking lot area while you're doing
So
the site work.
Sergeant up to like 10, 15.
Yeah, we'll do Green Road first and then Sergeant.
Yeah.
All right.
Sounds good.
We'll give that a shot, try and contact the neighbors.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Would the board like this large print of that property?
I'll take a look at it.
Save it for the sidewalk.
Yeah, save it for the sidewalk, yeah. Bring it in.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, next up we have Revision Energy regarding potential solar array at the landfill.
Thank you. So, we're next on the agenda, but if the library would like to go ahead, that would be fine with us.
Okay?
A little collusion here.
Okay, the library trustees regarding building maintenance, if the board is okay with that.
I think it's out of our hands.
That was very nice. I did in the corner of the squad, and I could listen to me hammer on.
Yeah. No, we're just here tonight. Well, actually,
But we should introduce everybody.
yeah.
Hi, please. I know you, mostly Tom, I was appointed in May. Stephanie, that's over? Yep, okay.
I guess the trustees are just looking for a little clarity on building maintenance expenses. The HVAC system, the computer screen was broken. It was $3,500, and it was in one of the line items, which raises the budget 40%. And I'm thinking to myself, as a board, well, why would this should not be an expense incurred upon the library? It's a town building. So I think this has been discussed many times. I just think we need clarity on, there is a line in the budget for building maintenance. But emergency expenses is nothing. So I don't think it's, in my mind, it's, if the police station has a problem, it's out of the building maintenance fund. And capital reserve, it's big enough. I don't see where this So I think, and because this happens occasionally, and this, I think it needs to be, just, I don't know if it's gonna be a memorandum of understanding how, who's
So
paying
what
for it.
specifically broke?
It's, well, we like sophisticated heating systems, which, that's a whole different story. The computer that, I call it a computer, it's a screen, that it no longer works. It is not, obviously it's backed up with another computer upstairs. So it's not an integral part, the heating and cooling system works. But I think the point is, things like, you know, those things are expensive. So it's either you know, in my mind, you say, well, geez, if the library is gonna take care of their own, you know, roof leaks, we'll call a roofer. Well, there better be a line item in there for it, which doesn't make sense to me, so. That's basically why we're here, to clarify who's paying for what.
The trustees are paying for it. The police department doesn't have a board of trustees.
Right. But it's a town building.
Yes, I know.
So, where do we, if the roof needs to be, which 10 years old, so in 20 years, where does that come from?
So typically, like when this roof failed on the former library, that was put as a warrant article before the voters. I would say this falls under a normal wear item now, would it not?
And it wouldn't come out of the impact fees accounts?
I don't think that can be used for,
Can't use for,
not for capital.
well, I thought it made it sound in here like if we do this, it will save us money on maintenance. But if we don't do, that's kind of what I read in the trustees letter.
It's an emergency, it's a normal wear and tear, it's part of the HVAC system. We are able to access the system through an app, but this is an actual screen that when the technicians, when we go downstairs to actually check what the statuses are, or their red, red items, on there.
Yeah, alerts. Yeah, it tells you what
It
the
tells you
system
what
is.
the alerts are, what sensors aren't working, and it's a dummy, it's like a dummy screen, it tells you the dummy lights.
It's a display.
It's a display.
But my question would be, is it sole source? Is it sole source, or do we have to go down and can we check it?
Right.
That was my point, is, have you got any other quotes?
You can do that. And I have no problem with that. If the heating system or the plumbing or whatever goes, it is on the library in their budget. That's what I'm hearing. It's not a town building. You're not considering that a town building. So that's where it gets fuzzy, because
It's been fuzzy for 40 years at
Exactly.
least.
It's because they have trustees, it's not a town
And
building.
trustees haven't always been
Yeah.
Right.
town friendly.
So,
I guess that's the right way to put
okay,
it.
so.
Just saying.
Yeah, no, it struck me odd that how, with a $5,000 building maintenance budget, it just struck me odd. So, as far as, and I don't want to go into the weeds, but, it's like the sidewalks and the outside is, because they're a trip hazard. Where do you draw the line?
So we don't have an emergency building fund for that building to draw on for a $3,500 bill to come up within the year. We have usual building maintenance expenses that we pay for, things like inspections and carpet cleaning and, usual things, not things that are part of the HVAC. We don't put that in the budget because these are things that come up as maintenance items in the building.
Oh, you didn't know that screen was gonna break?
I'm sorry?
You didn't know that screen was gonna break?
Exactly.
So let me ask you this, is the system working right now?
Yeah.
It
It's
is
functioning.
working right now.
What's our timeline for this to be a critical issue?
In my opinion, it's not critical, and I'm no expert, but it's remotely, it's on a computer now, doing the same thing that little, actually, that was just a.
So we don't know exactly. I mean, we're guessing that, it's fine without it. But the fact is that we have this bill, this is a $3,500 bill.
Yeah, I get that. I guess there's all these gray areas between what the
Right.
town does and what the trustees do. I mean, it took us 2.5 years to figure out why we're paying you for you to pay us back and then, send us a memo and then
Normally it doesn't.
hand you some change and then we're doing this. And so I think this is something that needs to be resolved, but rather than just trying to throw a Band-Aid on it tonight, if it's not an immediate issue, I think we need to sit down and figure out what that relationship is. Where does the town cover it? Where does the library cover it? So, and I don't even know how we begin to figure that out. Maybe it's a meeting between the trustee or just the review of the documents, or I'm looking at you because you were a trustee.
Yeah, and I was a trustee because I didn't like the way the trustees were doing things, and I know it's changed a lot since I first served on there. The problem's gonna not lie today, it's gonna lie down the road because the statute, the trustee roles and duties are defined by statute, and depending on the makeup of the trustees, how they want to interpret it. In the last, I want to say 5-10 years, we've worked very closely with Rebecca in particular in melding the town with the trustees so that our pay policies is the same, holidays are the same, consistency with issues on storms and that type of thing. We've come a long way, but you get a change in the Board of Trustees and that could all get thrown out the window. Something like this here, it's not an immediate problem, but you're anticipating, which is the good news. I think you might want a line item in your budget for maintenance emergencies, and that maybe just rolls over every year, and if it's $5,000, you have it in there. You need to develop a capital improvement plan of where you're gonna be. I don't know, I'm not as familiar with the capital improvement plans, but you need to have an assessment of your building, and Tom's gonna probably come in very helpful in that respect as to what down the road you're going to need, and start planning for it now and not waiting till the roof caves in to fix it. Would not be a good idea. And it's still town money, I get it, it's all town money. Whether it goes through the trustees or through the Board of Selectmen or the budget committee, it's all town money. But some of the politics haven't always been gracious.
So I think to clarify the RSAs, that the trustees govern the management of the library. So I think, the question is the town building, the building itself, the envelope, the mechanics of it. Is it a town building? I mean,
And I would say yes, it is a town building. And we've got to have a long-range plan for maintenance.
I would say I understand what Tom's trying to do, but as Ellie pointed out, it's trustees, so it's not the same as any town building. I would recommend taking emergency funds out of the building maintenance fund for this type of thing, but not until you have at least follow the town's procedure of at least 3 bids. And then Ellie brings up an excellent point. I think next year in your budget, you should have an emergency capital improvement line, so that you could build, as you know, the trustees keep the money at the end of the year, that you could build a fund so that if you have to redo sidewalks or something else, that would be where it would come from. So I think we have some solutions here. The immediate thing is to fix it. It's no critical thing, but you have enough time to get 3 bids and then come back to us.
And in fairness to the library, that when unexpended payroll funds and benefits do come back to the town.
Yes, that's it.
Nothing else does, but they have, and Rebecca in particular, give her credit
Yep.
for that, have made sure that any unexpended payroll benefit funds and so forth has come back to the town. But their regular budget does not.
Exactly, so,
All
but,
the I just want to clarify, we're governed by statute to return all unexpended town funds, and we cannot, the trustees cannot hold on to unexpended town
Yeah.
funds.
Yeah, for that, I'm gonna disagree with what you guys said, because if we put in our budget, town maintenance budget, which Rich has got me bidding some stuff down there, seal coating and stuff, that
Yeah.
he's covering under that. But if we keep in our budget, it gives us the power over it. It doesn't say, it doesn't allow them to go out and spend this money. I mean, it comes back to us. So we get to say, did you get 3 bids? Did you do that? Where if they're in charge of it, they can just spend it.
That's a good point, because the next trustee board
Right.
might decide,
And regardless, it's coming from the taxpayers, no matter how you look at it. We have to put more people in charge.
and I just look at, from my debriefing, I look at it, but as a town building, just like any other.
What was the purpose of the account that was set up? Was it for all town buildings?
I think so.
Yes.
Then if it was, and that's a town building, and that was the purpose of that account when it was set up, then they would be included in all town buildings.
I just think before we go writing checks, we
We need to look at it.
need to clarify what the relationship is going forward so that we have a standard that we're adhering to.
Right.
And I think the proper procedure is you do have your budget, so in this case, you would come to us to ask us for that, and that's what you're doing right now.
So I think we need to look at that account. We
But
need
if
to
they
look
put
at
it
the
in their
funding
budget,
source.
they're required to give their money back, so they can't build up a fund. So,
You think-
as far as this display, just a little more clarification on what it is. It's basically a diagnostic tool. So you can go down there and go through a bunch of things and tell what's going on with the system, know where to look for a problem. It's a big money saver for the technician because you can find a problem in seconds compared to troubleshooting and chasing it out.
This guy get paid $1,000 an hour?
Well, they're not far from that anymore.
They're not licensed for gas stations.
But I can get 3 prices on this. And the last time that Dowling priced something, I had prices for about half of what they priced, but because of COVID, we didn't go elsewhere, we stayed with them and everything else. So I can get 3 prices on this and we can see how it is.
You're saying that's a donation?
But it's, maybe. Except I was gonna hit them for another dog kick carcass.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming in full force.
You get to meet everyone, you get to meet the listening for.
And you got bumped up too. Connections.
Thank you.
All right, we'll talk some more.
All right, Revision Energy, round 2.
My bedtime is later.
Yeah.
Let's see how long that. You do that, I'll do that. That sounds good.
Doing James?
Pretty good, thanks. I'm gonna be putting this up on the screen, so don't feel like you need to flip along. It'll be easier to see up on the big screen.
Susan, can I borrow that? We'll send you some more copies. Thank you.
While we're doing that, can I just ask, what changed that in legislation that allows it now?
All sorts of great things. So it's, I feel like the select board has been asking me for this project for roughly 9 years. And today, HB 365.
Is HB 365?
Yeah, HB 365 is what changed. And what that did is it raised the net metering cap for municipalities only from 1 megawatt of solar capacity to 5 megawatts of solar capacity. So that jump in size allows us to achieve some economies of scale that make landfill construction financially feasible that in the past it did not. And it also gives us the ability to aggregate some load. I'm going to talk a bit more about that.
And based on the square footage there, you're saying the biggest we could put is the 4 megawatt.
A little above. I think it's like 4.5. I mean, we got more detail. We got more work to do. So this is kind of you got me all excited. So be quiet for a second, John. But we'll answer all your questions.
So Kevin, my name is John Branigan. We actually met briefly during the beginning of the street lighting
Yes.
project. Yeah, it's good to see you again.
Same here.
And I've met Phil out on the walk, and it's nice to meet the rest of you. So yeah, I joined Revision Energy just about a year ago, and I am going to turn it quickly back over to James to give you guys a little background about us. I imagine you've heard of us before, with James living in town and having talked to you guys in the past, but I'll let James give a little background.
Thanks, JB. So, my name's James Hasselbeck, Kingston resident, 19 Elkins Road. Full disclosure, my wife is an elected official. She's on the trustee committee for the libraries and currently serves as chair. But I'm here to talk about Revision Energy. My role there is director of operations, so sit on our executive team and also have broad oversight of all of our design, engineering, construction, and operations and maintenance activities. We get about 300 folks in our company. Our most local office is up in Brentwood. I moved to Kingston. We were there with about 10 people. We now have about 70 folks working out there in Brentwood, 300 overall, 2 offices in Maine, 1 more in the Upper Valley, New Hampshire, 1 down in North Andover. I got 7 employees who live in Kingston. This is our mission. We actually do believe in this work. We see our efforts of providing renewable energy as critical to overcome the environmental, economic, and social inequality for fossil fuels. We've been doing this for a while. We're 18 years old as a company. Just last week, we were named once again the #1 rooftop solar contractor in New England and #5 in the U.S., so that's pretty exciting. There's a bunch of other awards. The thing we're really proud about is our Ecorp Certification, which is actually a legal obligation in bottom right there, a certified B corporation, where we're audited annually by a third party, making sure that we are prioritizing not just profits. Profits are important, they allow us to do our work, but also we take good care of our team and our local community. So we just won the Best of the World award for the workers category by the third party B corporation. What else do we do? These are just some local partners we've worked with in the past. We do a lot of work with both local businesses and nonprofits. We're going to talk a lot about the kind of nonprofit municipal efforts that we can do to help non-taxpaying entities take advantage of some of the benefits of solar power. So this is a quick list of solar projects specifically for municipalities that we have developed and built in structures similarly to what we're going to talk about today. And kind of like I said at the beginning, this is an educational presentation for the select board. We have had some recent legislative changes in New Hampshire which provide some new opportunities. We're not looking for a decision on anything tonight, that's not our goal. I want to let you know, finally, that we can we can respond to the historical select board's request that there is an opportunity to develop a landfill for solar and provide some savings, both to the taxpayers of Kingston and I think the school district as well. Yeah. But I'd rather talk about design and engineering because that's what I like, and then John's going to talk a little bit about the financials here. So about 2-3 weeks ago, JB and Rich took a quick walk over on the landfill site. I've been in there a few times myself to just kind of get our eyes on the opportunity here. So we view, Revision Energy views closed cap landfills as ideal opportunities for large-scale solar developments for a couple reasons. One, there's not a whole heck of a lot you can do with this area. So right now, this is a non-revenue generating asset for the town. In fact, it's actually a cost center, right? Because you gotta maintain it, you gotta keep an eye on those wells, and then you gotta mow it a few times a year. So it's actually costing the taxpayer money to do nothing. I wanna turn that into a revenue generating opportunity for the town. Some highlights here, that we like about this site is the cap itself is in really good condition. which is really important to us, because as we all know, if we have to get into capital remediation, that's additional cost. Anything is possible, but as we get into costs that are not directly associated with solar generation, that can erode some of the financial benefits to the town. So the vents looked good, the roads look good, the drainage swales looked good. We obviously have a lot more due diligence ahead of us before we can finalize things, but this was kind of our initial overview. In our designs, we do our best to provide, we look for 15-foot radiuses around all existing gas tanks, because those are going to need work to replace during the lifespan of the solar system. We mitigate access to the existing drainage swales. We don't want to change the drainage profile of the existing cap in the landfill plan, and we'll go into a bit more on the racking there. But we can fit a lot of power up there, 15,000 panels. So this is a power plant. This is very different than some of the smaller systems you've seen around. So this will generate quite a bit of power.
James, how the number of panels compare to Brentwood, for example?
To the Brentwood fire station?
Yeah, how many panels are there, approximately?
It's on the sign on the road that I'm trying to
I was gonna say, I have a couple
let's see,
slides
I think
ahead.
it's 484 panels
Yeah.
there.
Okay.
So,
434.
434, okay.
Nice, Phil, thank you.
All right.
You know,
Thank you. I
30
just wanted to
times
be
the
able to
size.
compare the size to,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one, because when you try to visualize it, it's really hard to think. And if you haven't driven around the backside of the landfill, you kind of,
I have,
Yeah.
and it's huge, but you're still not gonna get the magnitude of what you see from an aerial view.
That's
Got
true.
it.
I mean, this
Exactly.
is a roughly 30-acre footprint, and we obviously can't utilize all of it because we do have some considerations on the steeper slope areas that we have to avoid.
Yeah.
But it's a large array here.
one of the things that James will talk more about, but absolutely is as we move forward and as we refine this is sort of a 30,000 foot view, what might be possible. Again, going into, CMA out of Portsmouth has the post-closure information about all the slope and pitch, and maintaining the integrity of the landfill is our biggest goal. So the system size may change, it may come down, but this is let's start here and see where we go.
The other, if you could just go back.
Yeah, sure.
The other thing I really like about this site, because we do this work all throughout New England, the key advantage that the town of Kingston has here is proximity to utility interconnection. So that's often one of our barriers to large-scale solar project development. I don't know if anybody's been reading about what's happening up in Maine, but we're having huge issues with solar adoption in Maine due to utility infrastructure. A great opportunity here is we have a fairly large circuit going north-south up on 125, and it's right where Unitil and NHEC split. So, you see just north of the landfill entrance on the left-hand side, you see a couple reclosers and then a couple big transformer banks. That's really great news for solar adoption because I don't have to buy that, and therefore the town of Kingston doesn't have to pay for it in the project cost. Obviously, we have to get additional detail from John and his team over at Unitil, but just from a high level, proximity to utility interconnection is one of the key advantages here. This is just a snapshot of some of the solar energy modeling tool. We use an industry tool called Helioscope. This kind of gives us a good idea about what this system is going to generate on an annual basis. Those bars start at January and then end at December, so you see the production does ebb and flow throughout the year naturally. It's only light for 2 hours a day here in December and January. And the other thing we model here is snow cover. So on that wheel on the top right-hand side, the biggest section in orange, it says soiling, 7.5%. What that means is snow cover. So we are modeling some losses for snow after snowstorms. But the nice thing about these ground-mounted arrays is that we pitch them at a 35-degree pitch, so the snow does slough off by itself, and we don't need to get up there. These are a few of the kind of key components we're using here. These are 405-watt solar panels manufactured by a company called Beauvais. Our inverter company is SMA. We've been working with them for about 16 years. And then the third company, this is our racking company. I'm pretty excited about it. This is our go-to landfill-based racking company called APA. They're out of Minnesota. And what they do a pretty unique ballast, right? So normally, like if you go up to Brentwood or some of the other areas we've been around town, we're putting posts into the ground, 5, 6, 7 feet below grade. We don't want to do that on landfill is I don't want to penetrate your cap. So what APA does is we use ballast, right? So we can do ballast in concrete, but in this case, we're using gabion rock. And why we love gabion rock is because the carbon footprint for that is significantly less compared to new concrete, and we can do our best to source it locally from the quarry, maybe after the next, maybe adoption.
So stick on that a second. The
Yeah.
racking system says a 25-year warranty. Aren't your panels like a 30-year warranty?
That's right. Yep.
So that's not a problem?
You know, it's what's the warranty on your car? Right? I mean, our
Depends on
most
how you buy it.
satellite scan, right, past the warranty. So, you know, a 25-year warranty is pretty good for anything made out of steel. And it's a galvanized steel structure.
I just question if, I would think you'd want them to at least match, or if the rack would be more than the panels, but.
The rack also don't do that much.
The what?
It's galvanized steel sitting there doing nothing. So 25 years is the industry standard for racking warranty. It's typically 25 to 30 years on the models, and 10 to 15 where you can get extended warranties to 20 for the inverters themselves. So that's typical for all racking suppliers. So these are a couple of samples. This is a good side shot of this same racking company in the town of Window, where you can see we have our kind of locally sourced rock supporting the solar panels there, and in the back, that's my electrical conduit on kind of stanchions there. Typically, you have to bury electrical conduit, 18 feet below grade, but by using rigid steel, you can keep it above ground and then eliminate disturbing the cap surface. So this is kind of how we build our racking and our inverters and electrical without penetrating the cap of the land.
How many of those above ground conduits are there gonna be?
Quite a few. So at minimum one for every inverter. And if we were to move forward with this project, we kind of site the inverters. We want to minimize our electrical runs, so we kind of site them in banks. So every 5 or 10 rows, we kind of bring everything together so we can do one big conduit run right down the middle of the array. That's a project-specific design, and we're not at that level yet. Sometimes, for whatever reason, we can't use that gabion rock, so our secondary solution is a more conventional poured concrete. So we build these forms on top of, so we take the existing landfill cap, scrape just the grass out, but don't go into the engineered cap at all. Put a nice bed of crushed stone there, and then form up these concrete pads, and we get to build these big roadways to get the pump trucks in, so we don't mess up the settlement profile of the landfill, but anything's possible. So this is another landfill project we did for the city of South Portland, Maine, where that APA racking is not a good solution, and we were able to mitigate any landfill cap damage by this setup here. The last thing we do is we think it's really important to provide operations and maintenance. So I have an operations and maintenance team. Their entire job is to make sure that these systems are producing what they do. Because all of these financial numbers that kind of make the financials work, they're all based on modeling. And we feel very strongly that you can't just trust a model, you have to make sure it looks it. So we have a variety of different packages of our team to come out and take a look at this.
It's always about the money, James.
It's always about the money.
That's right.
Perfect segue into the next slide. So as we jump into the next slide, I do want to add that James and I have said this, I'm going to repeat it right now. These are very high level preliminary discussions. Some of this is an opportunity to tell you finally what is possible. Here in New Hampshire, as compared to our neighboring states of Maine and Massachusetts that have, you hear a lot about community solar farms, you hear about these larger development. We really don't have that yet in New Hampshire, and we're just about to get there. As James said, the change in legislation, what we're looking at with Senate House Bill 315, being adopted by a bipartisan group and being hopefully signed in. I was hoping I was going to say it was signed in today, but I think something else was signed in. But we're expecting it to be signed into law very shortly here in the next day or two. So as I go in through the next few slides, I'm trying to balance with you guys, giving you enough information and as much specific but we really can't put a total pin on the numbers yet. It's really going to involve some engineering and a little bit more conversations about what we refer to as the load profile. As I go through this, stop me at any point, and I apologize, this slide's a little bit text heavy. Stop me at any point if you have any questions about some of the terms I'm going to use. So when we think about a municipality, or we think about a solar project in general, if this was a commercial operation, you know, Joe's garage, and he wants to put solar on the garage, it benefits him from the investment tax credit as well as the depreciation, and then of course the benefit of having solar on the business. As a municipality, we don't have the opportunity to take advantage of that tax credit or the depreciation. So a lot of times a municipality will look for other vehicles to build solar. If this was a smaller array, where we were maybe doing something just at a public works garage or something like that, there's a vehicle called a PPA, or a power purchase agreement. We would find an investor, we would build it on your roof. You'd be able to take advantage of the energy that's produced on site, or what we call used behind the meter. Here at the landfill, it's going to be a slightly different thing. There's no on-site load there. You don't have a transfer station or something that has a metal crusher or anything like that. So as we go through the model, so those are sort of some of the challenges. But as we go through the model of why is this now possible in 2021, and you've asked James a few times, and now he's back here today with me saying, hey, we think we see a path. There's actually two possible pathways. Probably the best I see of the two is a program where there's a pilot and a lease agreement. So pilot standing for payment in lieu of taxes. As James said earlier, the landfill is really kind of a liability right now. It's not gaining you any assets. It's not really on the tax rolls. You have to maintain it. So payment in lieu of taxes, and then a lease agreement. This is not going to be printing money for you, but it's a way to make the numbers make sense and get some monthly revenue coming in. This pilot and energy purchase agreement basically is the lowest risk and the lowest complexity. So some of the highlights here: the town would lease the land to an established investor that we've worked with. We've done projects like this with this set of investors in the past for 35 years. The investor then owns and operates and has all the responsibility for if anything happens to the system.
Is the investor private versus let's say the Unitil?
Correct. Yeah. It's not a utility-owned investment.
So it's a private investor.
Yes, it is. They're going to.
What side you got?
Previously, probably a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, a guy from Colorado came over.
Yeah. Remember, he didn't come back? It was because this legislation that's about to get signed in is required for this to pencil.
Yep. So then the investor would set up what we refer to as a host meter. Again, there's no on-site load there. That host meter has to be on the default energy supply. And they would be basically net metering, or putting all the energy that's produced back into the grid. But then it becomes their responsibility to have off-takers. And this is where it's a great opportunity for the town as well as the school district to become the entities that use that power, or get the bill credits on their bill. So this is what we refer to as assigning the load to the host meter. So we'll get into this a little bit later in some of the next steps, but we would want to partner with the school district, make sure that the town's load matches the size of the array that we can build. Because pretty much you'd want to offset, you'd want to be able to use most of the electricity. The investor, it's a big risk for them if there isn't enough load to match the size of the array that's built, because right now under New Hampshire's net metering, the value of putting solar into the grid isn't very high. So it's fairly risky, but not an impossible to pencil investment. So the revenue, again, would come from the lease and the payment in lieu of taxes. There is, I don't want to muddy it too much, but there's a little bit of an upshot potential if electricity continues to raise in price, which typically, other than the pandemic, we've seen happen. Right? During the pandemic, we saw that the default service rates were pretty low. And I have a friend who works for the Rockingham Regional Planning Commission as their executive director. He recommended a few towns go to a third-party competitive supply, and they looked like they were upside down for a short period of time. And I said to him, I was like, Tim, 99% of the time, that's 100% good advice to do that. It just was a little blip, but if you look over its course of a 3-year contract, it's still going to be solid advice. So one of the things that, so the upside is if electricity to goes up, the investor will basically share in that value with you with a little bit additional payment towards, as part of the agreement, to value the fact that, yeah, electricity is getting expensive, they're making more money in their transaction, and to entice you to keep that load on this array, which, you know, most people do. Once you commit to this, it makes sense to stay throughout the duration. I mentioned the 35-year lease term on the land. On the energy side, on the load side, we look for a little bit less, probably 25 years. Again, details to be worked out as we get closer to actual numbers and actual sizing. Because a lot of us, we don't want to have a crystal ball to say, what's the energy market going to really look like in 25 years with the value of the array? A lot of factors. So again, there's a lot of still to be worked out, but just know that this is a lower risk, low complexity. The town doesn't have to manage the off-takers or other things that go along that the investor will take on and maintenance. So the nice thing as well is for the individual buildings, because you're not the host meter, the investor's the host meter who has to stay on the default service, you can still go out and get a competitive rate for electricity. So you can work with the various firms that are out there, and there's a little conversation coming up about community power coalition, community power options, which is very different from solar or green energy, so I don't want to confuse those two things, but just know that it doesn't lock your individual bills in. And the great thing is as far as paying your bills, seeing your bills, and budgeting, it still comes in from Unitil. You're just getting the value of being part of the solar array that's on your land.
Is this going to end up like the library, James, where there was really no net gain to the library? That's very simplistic. I understand that.
It's a good question. The answer is no. That library project didn't pencil ever. And
we were just swapping one energy company for another.
That's right.
There was no net gain to the library.
That's right. That was the goal for that specific project from the beginning because of its small scale. Here, if we cannot provide meaningful savings to both the town and the host sites, in this case, the school districts that made a part of this, and the investor, the project won't move forward. John was saying that we're talking $12 to $13 million investment here, and nobody is going to invest that type of capital without a return, including the town.
Yeah.
Right.
The money thing.
It's always, yeah. Before I move on to the next slide, I do want to just say that there is an opportunity on a very different scale. Exeter recently competitively selected Revision Energy to build a solar array on their landfill. They did opt to own it outright. Now we're talking a much different scale. Do you remember how large that's?
The Exeter project is roughly 1/5 of this size and roughly 1/5 of the cost. And at the time, they had some extremely low bonding cost of capital for some other stuff they were going on, and they were very interested in ownership of the array.
So they went on their own then?
They did. They put a bond, solar-specific bond, in their last town meeting and passed overwhelmingly. That is not, we can talk about either, but that would not be our recommendation for the town of Kingston because the scale of this landfill project makes that bond a very likely a challenging road.
Exactly. I wanted to bring it up just in the context. A lot of people are asking me these days. Susan brought it up about.
There's a lot of interest because of the legislation that's been passed.
Exactly. And then there's a little bit of buzz about the ARPA funds that are potentially going to be available.
So, possible what?
ARPA.
The ARPA, the economic recovery money. One of the things we see with that, Kevin, is that it is called out very specifically that clean energy projects do qualify broadly. So I always am sensitive to the fact that towns have, we could always spend more money when we get it. So I know that there's potentially other projects. I do like to mention it, again, on a much, much smaller scale. Recently working with Madbury. They've been looking at a solar array for a while. They didn't have other CIP projects that they felt that the ARPA money would make sense. So they're actually going to put that right into that. It's only 100 kilowatts worth, so we're talking a much smaller. But again, just to think about it, the pilot path, that's sort of, again, a way to get a lease agreement and a payment in lieu of taxes, and have that green energy in your backyard is probably, again, the lowest risk, lowest complexity. Outright ownership, it's very expensive up front, but it's an endowment to the town. If you could find a way, Exeter's choice, again, on a much smaller array, they find a way to find that money. The cost of money was cheap enough. You look at the 40-year expected commercial life cycle, the long-term payments the return makes a lot of sense. Again, I feel sort of bad at skipping over some of the highlights because we always want to talk specifically about dollars, but again, until we get a little further down the road with how much load we have on site, this slide here is just to show quickly that I had to make an assumption that says if we're going to build a 4.8 megawatt array, we would like to find about 4.8 megawatts of load. So again, we're going to partner with the school district, look at every single bill from the community, from the town that you're responsible for, and aggregate the load to see what does that look like.
This is another kind of nuance in that House bill that Kingston specifically really benefits from, right? So the town itself does not have enough load to support the scale, not enough load. Yeah.
Right.
But if we add in the school district, right, and because we are in the school district, we host the high school, that opens up all of the school buildings within the district. So not just Beatty and Sanborn, but everything within the district. That combined load would make, I bet, we need the bill, we gotta do the due diligence, but that combined load, if we can partner with the Town of Kingston and the SAU, that can make this project.
But the SAU is owned by Kingston and Newton.
Correct.
Correct.
So, under what was passed on the House bill, we have to have the use as well as to offset the generation.
That's correct. That's a simplified yes. There's like a ton of nuance in that, but yes, it has to be municipally tied load.
Correct.
I could
It
not
can't just be a generator.
the economics don't work.
Yeah.
Basically, if you do it that way. But if we can assign the load from other municipal services, then we can get a higher value for that solar electricity from the utility, which then allows us to provide higher lease payments and higher payments to the town.
Given I'm sorry, Jane, I was just gonna take that another step. If we have to have enough of a load to make this size project worthwhile, would we be able to partner with other small towns like Danville? I mean, Newton's a small town. We're partners in our schools. There's not a lot of industry compared to Kingston, but are there agreements and standard forms that we could partner with Newton, Fremont,
There
who
are.
sends their kids to our high school, for example?
Yep, that's again why I think this is such an awesome opportunity. Because of our regional school district, it opens up the universe of load options. So that is absolutely an option. That said, from the investor perspective, they want as few folks to deal with as possible. That's why
And from the town of Kingston's perspective, the same situation exists.
Everybody has an opinion on things.
Oh my God, it's a nightmare.
Yeah.
So yes, that's possible, but our goal will be to have that as small a loop with as big chunks of electricity load as possible.
Yeah, and I'll add to that this Bill 315 is allowing it. The language that's specifically in there talks about political subdivisions. So you think about the SAU and how you are part of it with other towns. It allows that multi-town. Has to stay within the same utility. So, if we had a neighboring town in Eversource territory, that there was some connection. Some people are trying to define this more broadly as county level.
Newton is different because our school is really shared. It truly
Yeah.
is shared. It's not like other SBM one school board with both towns electing. It's very simple.
Yep.
And we've tried a few times to get Fremont to work in a co-op, and that
Just
never,
doesn't go.
And that's been 50 years in the making.
Yeah.
So.
I live right across the river in South Berwick, Maine, and we have where my son goes to school, we have two towns, and we actually now are sharing with Rollinsford, New Hampshire. So I appreciate the complexity, and I was trying to get wrangled onto the school board, and I politely declined. As I go into the next slide here again, my third time saying this caveat, I really don't want to stare at the numbers. These are high level figures at the high level design, and there's a couple things I didn't factor in here. This is, again, if we looked at the turnkey solution, it can be a staggering, it's a lot of money. I didn't factor in any possible ARPA funds being applied to this. This is just sort of a high level, what does it look like? One of the reasons why I like to show it, though, again, this is the kind of thing that Exeter went through. If you go down the road, let's just say after our engineering review and we look at the load and this system size comes in at 2 megawatts for whatever reason. Well, now these economics are going to change, and depending on the cost of money and what the bond would look like and how much ARPA funds, the reason why I'm really showcasing this second option at all is it may change enough to suddenly become more in reach. At almost 5 megawatts, 4.8, which we designed intentionally up to the max of what's going to be allowed, this is a lot of money, and as James said earlier, we wouldn't expect this to be necessarily a good fit in this financial model for the town.
I would vote against it.
Yeah, exactly. But if we start looking at, if this through engineering and load profile, if for some reason that changes, we'd rerun the numbers at a much more detailed level and then consider the number.
Kind of found the sweet spot for municipal ownership bond-wise to be sub $5 million. That's where, from the bonding capacity, the insurance capacity, and then the ongoing maintenance capacity, that's where we can provide really good financial economics to the town.
Yep.
Do you have this on a disk?
Yeah.
I do, absolutely, yeah. I'm gonna we have a portal called Client Point, and I'll share it with Susan, and she can share it with
Because I like to share it with the school district, to be a business manager there.
Absolutely, which is great. That gets us into some of our other slides we have coming up as well. So again, just quickly talking about the levelized cost of electricity. One of the things we've seen year on year and time on time, electricity prices go up. When you can do something like build a solar array in your community, you're basically building a power plant. As James said, at that scale, it's much larger than the other arrays that are in the area. I'm sort of going to look back. I think I know the answer. It would be one of the largest in New Hampshire, depending on timing, because New Hampshire doesn't have, like in my opening slide, that in Maine we see these 4 megawatt and above arrays. We don't have those here yet, but it's going to happen. So good opportunity on your land. Quickly, we talked about the, finding the financing, finding the impact partners. One of the things I really wanted to mention as well is if we were to put a deal together, they're established investors who have worked with us in other states and other projects that are really similar to this. They understand the risks and reward, the challenges. Our legal and finance divisions have worked together with them to put together agreements that work well for all parties. To get the investor interested, there's a fair amount of risk, so there has to be some upside for them as well. But one of the things I was talking with Chris from our finance division today, he said, let's just say 8 years down the road, the net metering rules completely change in New Hampshire and there could be some different model. But the system's already built, but still relatively new or well within its life period. This doesn't have to feel like an agreement that's going to last forever. Now, if the net metering rules don't change or other things, yeah, this is a pretty good picture, this 35-year lease on the land, 25 years of load assignment. You'd want to keep that in mind. I'm not trying to say that it can change radically. But again, if net metering rules changed and there's a lot of off-takers or whatever, it doesn't have to feel like it's the final word either. It is, at the end of the day, it is your landfill, it is your property. I'm going to let James kind of hop in, but we can circle back. I want to leave time for some questions, but obviously you've seen us around, but I wanted to share just some of the local things as well, and I know it's already come up, but.
So you might recall, the library project started out as a PPA opportunity too, with a several hundred kW project, roughly the size of Redwoods, and for a variety of reasons, that wasn't the right site. So then we went back out to bid. I think I responded to 3 different RFPs in that process for a small turnkey per bucket egg, which, it's because of its small scale, the goal of that is not to save the library a ton of money. The goal of that is to provide opportunities for our local community members to understand how solar energy works and how it can benefit that. So I think right now we have like a story walk going through the woods and the trails back there. We have a bunch of other stuff going on. Rebecca and her team have been great in kind of partnering with us as we do some education around that.
Yeah, this is a screenshot directly from the library website that I wanted to grab, sort of on the left-hand side, and then that little sideways array is just below the fold, and then I logged into our energy monitor and grabbed a screenshot of the production last Friday and included that in the slide. Sometimes when we do projects like this, obviously not the big power plant size, but we look at both the cache and cache, the education ability for our Sunsquatch character to really help kids to understand the future of what energy is going to be. We see this is headed in the direction. Wanted to include a couple pictures here in case you hadn't driven by it a few times. And Phil, thanks for looking forward to get that number of the 434.
So this is a cool example because not only is it our neighboring town up here, but this system under a similar structure has been installed and operational for a few years. And if you talk to the town of Brentwood, they would tell you that they are seeing greater savings than we projected. And that's something I feel really strongly about, and that is kind of really core to the advice we give our kind of business development team. These are big projects with municipalities who are ultimately responsible to the taxpayers. We have gotta under-promise and over-deliver. It's easy to make spreadsheet models, see a bunch of whatever, you just crank up your generation or reduce the soil
snow days, yeah.
And it makes the numbers look great. But what really needs to happen is that system needs to produce. So I think we're like 10 to 12%. Give or take, above what we projected for the town of Brentwood for now, I think our 4th or 5th year run.
Yep. You can sort of gauge the age of the array, our old logo up here, which I just heard from marketing. We're going to give them that a little update. One of the other things I was impressed with, and I focus on the commercial and municipal side, but when we think about a community of this size that we've done 41 residential projects for your neighbors here in town. I thought that was pretty cool. And 182 kW, when you consider a residential array is anywhere, say, between 6 and 12 kW, that's pretty impressive.
So why I think this is interesting is, you know the size of our town. This is like a pretty high percentage of solar adoption. This is just our company. There's other solar companies too doing good work in town. So I think that this shows that there's an interest for this from our local community, and if we can show that we can provide taxpayer savings, I think that there'll be a lot of local support for this.
One of the other things that we do quite a bit, Revision Energy is a very different company. In addition to actually building, designing, James, as our operations director, and his team are actually out there doing the EPC or the construction work. Some companies will just be a sales guy like myself and maybe 2 other people in the office, and then they'll farm everything else. We also really engage in the community, not only from some of the slides I'm going to show you coming up, but we didn't include in here, we have our Revision Energy Training Center. We find it really important to grow future electricians and future tradespeople that can be part of this clean energy revolution with us.
Yeah, this is a huge job creation opportunity globally and nationally. We feel very strongly that we need to get young folks or folks looking for a second career into the trades. So we have the first and only solar-specific licensed electrical training program in the country. I currently have 64 young men and women in New Hampshire, Maine going through that program. I have another 100 that are already licensed.
As I raise a son who's 14 now, I always encourage him and his friends to consider the trades, because I know when I was going through school, you were kind of college track or maybe trades track, or trouble. And yeah.
And then you can charge $3,000 to
exactly.
Display screen and HVAC.
You need to find places for them to live.
That's it, all of that. Yep.
Let's wrap this up.
Exactly. So some of the other public engagements, ribbon cuttings, always really impressed with the news coverage that we get routinely. We look at it, schools, neighboring schools like Dover, with what they've done. Obviously, I heard the Nature Conservancy mentioned earlier. There's a lot of tie-ins, education, and also, again, just it is the future of where we see electricity going. So we want to spend the last few minutes talking a little bit about the next steps. And again, this is obviously a very high-level presentation. We're not coming in for any sort of a vote or agreement tonight, but we want to to show you that the opportunity finally exists. After several years of looking at it, thinking about it, I'm actually having a similar conversation lunchtime tomorrow with Portsmouth in a little bit more informal setting. The time in New Hampshire is now to really start exploring this. So we're wondering to see how the town would feel, and we could talk a little bit about what the next steps might look like in that exploration and how to get things moving forward. I did lay out a couple of, again, sort of bullets as James walked me through and he can speak to, but this concept of the utility pre-application, working with Unitil to understand what the upfront possibilities would look like, what sort of things would look like down the road. Certainly engaging with the school district and the SAU as soon as possible to understand their willingness to be part of the load profile that we mentioned. And then from there, we have a lot of refinements to do, making those unknowns known so that when we do start talking numbers, we're much more focused and much more closer to the number that everybody's going to ask. How does this pencil? What does this look like? And then certainly after that, there's a long list. I just put in a couple, but there's a long list of state permitting, system impact studies. Whenever you're working with a landfill, you're going to make sure that the post-closure conditions are maintained and met, that we don't do anything to the cap, working with DES and on and on and on, that James does in our team.
Whose responsibility does that remain with the town
That
or the
would
investor?
ultimately remain our responsibility, so it would become our responsibility, so, you know, it's one bullet point, but, you know, these 5 bullet points, just to give you some scale, this is a roughly 12 to 18 month development cycle, and one of the big things that we have to do is the state alteration of terrain already, because we're disturbing more than 100,000 square feet, so we have to do a bunch of due diligence on the engineering side to show how we're not materially impacting either the cap itself, both during construction and post, and then essentially prove that to Rich and his team up at the AOT. By the time we do all that engineering, that's, you know, roughly 6-8 months, and then they have a 3-month review. So that's the big tent in the pole, state permitting, and then utility system impact study is the other kind of So our advice here, right, we're seeing this happening in Maine. This legislation is going to pass in the near term. We have a commitment from the governor, and, you know, the legislature has already approved it.
It hasn't passed yet.
Sorry? It has not passed yet, but it's
Passed but not
literally
signed.
today or tomorrow. It has been passed by the legislature. It needs to be signed by the governor, who has committed to signing this bill specifically for municipalities.
Yep.
Not
So
going to change his mind this time, right?
we don't think so. We got bipartisan
The reason
support
why
on this.
is because it's focused on municipalities.
Yep.
That was the
That was the issue.
that was the issue. at hand.
In some of the
So
compromise.
your letters actually helped. If you recall, I think it was like 4 years ago, the Kingston Select Board wrote a letter along with, you know, many of our.
Not me.
Sorry?
Not me.
Not you, it was before you, but a variety of New Hampshire towns and municipalities wrote letters asking for this legislation, and it was that outreach that motivated the government to approve this legislation. So we think there's going to be, as soon as this bill gets signed, your friends from Colorado and other states are going to now see this is a market opportunity again, and what we've seen in Maine is that there's a big influx in both state permitting applications and utility permit applications, which are now pushing out the development cycles for 2, 3, 4 years. Some projects that we've been working on in Maine right now, they're going to get a utility approval to construct in like 2024 or 2025 because so many applications came in so quickly after the legislation was signed. We understand there's likely going to be a competitive agreement here. There should be. You know, that can be either an RFP call or a request for qualifications, an RFQ. So our kind of advice is that the town, if you think that this is interesting, and if you think the school district would be willing to partner with the town, that we should start talking about, you know, getting that information out so you can get some bidders and, you know, get this process moving, because it is a long cycle.
What I would say is I would support 100% doing something at the landfill to this degree on a large scale. I can appreciate your statement that you would vote against a turnkey,
Of this
but
size.
I would still like to look at the numbers and do due diligence for the town of Kingston itself. If the numbers work for us, owning it is not a bad thing. It's self-serving for you to lease it. I get that part, and I can appreciate that. What I appreciate even more is you've done your homework with the racking system and everything else, which doesn't affect the landfill at all. It fits perfectly, and I appreciate that. But I think we have a policy and procedure. We have to go to bid on an RFP, and I'd like to look at all the numbers. Right, exactly. So I would recommend we move forward. But I think the first step would be an RFP process.
I think that's right, except I do think you should have a conversation with the school district. And I don't want to harp on that too much, but it's actually really critical that the load for this system exists, and it has to be local. It can't be any school district.
Right.
So if the school district, for whatever reason, said, no, we hate saving money on clean energy bills, this project would be much more difficult.
Okay.
So I'm already engaged. They're building some greenhouse out front, and I'm like, I gotta go give them, I'm gonna build some little battery powered solar thing to power some of the life skills efforts they're putting in their new greenhouse that they're building. So they're into this concept, but I think that is a conversation the town and the school district needs to have. You don't have to make any deals yet, but like the high level, do you want to partner with us on pursuing this opportunity? Because without that partner, your RFP and RFQ process is going to look very
Yeah, yeah. And just to echo that, we just saw every town and city is different. We just saw in Brunswick, Maine, where their school district and their town just did a big agreement. It was in the Portland Press Herald today. They understand that going in together on this type of a project, it's a solar project that Revision's fortunate enough to work on, makes a ton of sense for all the taxpayers. When we look at a school budget and we look in any town or city, whether the school board and the town select board get along or not, the taxes are inextricably linked, and it's a big part of it.
I just text the business administrator.
There you go.
To say it's coming. They'll be very interested.
I think so,
Yeah.
and we want to be deliberate in being supportive of the town, but I want to be very clear. I want to bid this job.
Yeah,
I want to
absolutely.
build it and maintain it. That's our primary priority. So we're happy to provide education and guidance on where to look. The New Hampshire Municipal Association is starting to put together some pretty good literature on these concepts and those things to keep in mind. So consider us a resource, but I want to be very clear that we want to build. We're a construction company. That's our job. We like to build stuff, and so that's our priority here. So as much guidance as we can give you to do the work, that's great, but we don't want to preclude our ability to be a competitive bidder.
Yeah, I'll throw two things on that. One is New Hampshire Municipal Association does have some great information, not just because I'm going to be involved with it. August 18th, we're going to be doing a webinar through NHMA, myself and Dan Weeks, one of our other co-owners, explaining a lot of what's happening and happening quickly, and talk a little bit about 315, how its impact, what community power is going to look like. And then the other thing I'd say is this is about to get a little bit more complex before it gets easy. And what I mean by that is I would encourage a request for qualifications. If it's just bid or price, you may not really get what you want. Again, I'm not going to pick on anybody. I heard there was somebody from Texas or somewhere. They're going to see this as a new opportunity to come back. The reason why they hadn't come back yet is it wasn't right then. So with a request for qualifications, you're going to be able to really vet companies that understand the entire New Hampshire process, building on landfills, all the complexity, not just doing a solar farm or solar array. We saw that in Maine, as James said, it was I jokingly say it was sort of the Wild West during the gold rush. So much so that we saw some of the substations hit capacity, and the major utility up there, really, the two major utilities really scratching their head to how to bring all this online. I don't think that's going to happen to Unitil or to Eversource in the near term, but it could. And as I think as we jump forward, the towns and cities that understand the process, work with a partner who can help them develop it through, are going to do well in these early days.
That's right. I mean, there's a lot of unknowns. The permitting process, the utility process are the two big ones, AOT is only permitted in the state of New Hampshire one solar landfill project, and it was significantly smaller than this. So they may make us build a big lagoon or something, and we just don't know that yet. So anybody that says, here's how much it's going to cost, or here's the savings, it is impossible to say that right now. So that's why we like the RFQ process.
But the environmental footprint reduction is important. I know it's
Massive.
Kingston.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's no question about that.
You know, I always.
This array could wipe out the carbon impact of the entire school district and the entire town.
That's pretty huge.
Yeah, I skipped
And
over.
provide financial savings.
Yeah, exactly. I skipped over it quickly, but there's some metrics you can put against. We know if we build an array of X size at 4.8 megawatts, it's like 1,400 vehicles. I mean, there's real measurable statistics that you can look at this. And as towns and cities have carbon footprint reduction goals, as we do culturally, and I think it will resonate with the schools. Most children today, I know my son's generation, they look at us and say, what did you do and what are you doing about it now, and what are they going to be doing about it when they're of my age, So I really appreciate the time tonight. It's great to see some of you again, meet you guys, some who I haven't. And we're available here for questions. That's the other thing, we really want you to think of us as a resource through this process. Never to preclude us from bidding, because of course we want to be part.
Would it be something that we could partner with, at the very least, we paid you consultant fee to write an RFP?
As long as that doesn't preclude.
No, we would not.
What I could do,
Yeah.
what I could do is share some examples
Yeah.
of RFQs that other New Hampshire and Maine municipalities have successfully used.
Okay,
How's that?
that sounds good.
Great.
We worked with another vendor to develop an RFP for us that was BlockFi for internet technology.
Oh yeah.
And they were able to bid on the project as well, but we had no way of knowing what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the stuff because I have two hats here, right? I run the school, run the company, but, all three of my kids are in the school district. That's the biggest piece of my tax bill in town every year, right? So this is an opportunity, I think, for me to do two things, right? Something I love for work, and then something to help out my town.
I make a joke sometimes that younger folks look at me and they don't understand what I'm saying, but I always say as a resident or a taxpayer, I want 3 horses in the race, and as a vendor I say sign here and press hard, there's 3 copies. Old carbon joke, people don't remember those, but
They don't know what carbon paper.
that's it, exactly. Well, hey, thanks again.
James, have you bought your cow patty deed yet?
Sorry?
Have you bought your cow patty deed yet?
Man, I just got back from Maine today.
I got some in my car.
It's Kingston, baby.
Chance for $1,000?
Cow patties?
How about this? I'll buy 2 cow patties if, once we award the RFP to the.
You only have one in each driveway. You better be cow patty.
Bribery in front of the state.
I think actually Stephanie Kingston's on that.
Fundraisers.
Don't forget your book on Kingston history as well.
That's a good book. It's in the library. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks, appreciate it.
Okay, next up we have Jericho Road residents regarding Jericho Corey blasting. How you doing, Mr. Taglieri?
I'm okay.
For the record, can you state your name for the record?
It's Matt Taglieri, president of Jericho, 24 Jericho. The reason I'm here today is I want to discuss a very serious and dangerous incident that I was unfortunately a part of back on July 15th. Toramayo Industries, as you know, they contract GM drilling and blasting. They conducted a blast that day within 200 feet of my property line. During that time, I was out in the woods. My daughter happened to follow me out, and blast occurred, I was hit with debris while standing on my own property. Now, no one was hurt. No one was hurt this time. But on my own property, I was hit with debris from this blast. And they're just way too close, and they don't respect the abutters. This isn't the first instance where they've put folks in danger. I mean, we think back just a few months ago with this gender reveal, which I understand they claimed they had nothing to do with, but they knew about it, and they allowed it, which would be aiding and abetting, allowing them to do this on their premises, 80 pounds of tannerite. Now, that made worldwide news, negative news for the town of Kingston. Then they went and cleared, well, before that they cleared 20 acres of trees. They replaced it with a 5-foot hill, and they call that safe. So if someone were to go back there and climb this 5-foot hill, they could fall to their death, but 5 feet, that was sufficient to protect the quarry, the people from going into the quarry. So I come to Selectmen today to really make a decision, because now's the time to act. Not when someone gets hurt, because that's what's coming. Now is the time to act and do something to stop them from doing any more work on that north wall. They're endangering my family, my neighbor's family, and they have no regard. They're not a good neighbor. They don't care about the abutters. So I ask you, I beg you, please do whatever is within your power to stop them from coming any closer to me. I shouldn't feel like I have to go and hide inside my house and let the bombs fall around me as they do a blast every time. I mean, if someone is discharging a firearm, you wouldn't tell them, well, go hide in your basement. That's not their burden. It shouldn't be my burden to hide while they go and they do their blasting. It's not safe. And I understand that they claim that they are grandfathered in, they can operate within a certain number of feet. So be it. The town ordinance is 200 feet. Any of the Jericho residents are yet to see a document that proves their grandfather status. Regardless of that, I feel in danger standing in my property when they're blasting, and I've been hit with debris now while standing on my property. So I come to you and ask you, what can you do about this?
Well, I would tell you that no, you shouldn't have debris landing on your property when they're blasting. I completely agree with that. And I would say that, it's up to the rest of the board, but I think it needs to be investigated, and obviously the mitigation factors that they proposed are not enough if that's taking place. So I would say we need to investigate this matter.
I think it is being investigated.
That's correct.
Do they ever record their blast, Chief?
They do.
So can we get a copy of the recording to prove that the debris is flying in Mr. Targaryen's backyard? And we need to see that.
Once the investigation is done, they're doing both. I believe they set up a monitoring device there on your property, and they videotape all of the blasts.
Well, they didn't videotape it from my property line, because that's what I did, and I have a video. And you can hear, it's not the easiest thing, but you can hear things falling through the trees as they blast. Now, can I prove that that's on my property? No, but I can tell you that I was being pelted with material after they did that blast.
You and other residents of your neighborhood have been here a number of times, and I don't think there's any doubt that Mr. Toromeo is grandfathered in. And even if we could prove something now to get more restrictive barriers for it, you and the other resident may have to take some measures of your own as well. I don't know that it could be a one-pronged proposal. I'm just trying to be very upfront with you, because they are grandfathered. They can't blast on that site. They don't have a right to blast you out of your house or debris on your property. no question there, not arguing with you on that at all. And so once they have another investigation, see what happened this time, okay, then maybe that 5 foot is not gonna work. We knew it was only gonna be in the short term anyways, because it needs time to grow. Why he ever cut it down, I can't even answer that. But I don't know that there's anything that we could really do. But you and the other neighbors may have to take action as well, just saying.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've looked into lawyers. I mean, as you know, lawyers are extremely expensive from what we've been told. Tormeo can drag this out. I mean, they essentially they're backed by a financial giant, and you know they can just wait us out and bleed us dry from funds. So in terms of a legal avenue, it's really not much of an opportunity there, unfortunately. But again, I go back to this. You know, it's heading in a bad direction, and while it was only earth and some smaller stones this time, a stone of just a little bit bigger could really hurt somebody, and even kill somebody. So, do we wait to that point when someone gets hurt, and then the lawyers come in and they say, "Oh, Tormeo, you shouldn't have been doing that," but who else knew about this? Everyone in this room knows about this. Now's the time to do something before we get to that point. You guys have the power.
To what? To pay another lawyer that you're going to pay for as well? I mean, I guess I'm frustrated by your frustration, because the town is doing anything. You come here, you ask, we research. They're still within their rights. That doesn't mean we like it. Doesn't mean we like it, but we may not be able to do any more than you're doing.
But what right do they have to impinge on my property and drop dirt, stone?
Yeah, we gotta check to make sure they don't do it.
I'm a Jericho resident, so I figured I could join this team.
Okay, well, we haven't recognized you yet. Mr. St. James said something to say.
What I would ask is the town, we should be sharing with you all the information we have as far as their grandfather and everything else, that they're operating within their boundaries. And I believe what we uncovered, they could operate within 50 feet of your property line, not 200 feet. Okay, and I think we should provide all that to you so you can see it in writing. We're not hiding anything, because we did fully investigate. And I believe that's the case when we found it, correct?
Yeah, I can't remember the exact measurements now, but it was 50 feet from property or 250 from the house. That was what it was.
And I'm not aware of that. I said the blast was within 200 feet. I didn't measure it because I'm not legally allowed to walk out to where that blast was. But I could see.
But we were under the impression it had to be 200 feet from the property, and we found we were wrong. Okay, so I feel your pain, but we can't stop a business if they're doing what they're doing legally. I agree you should be held to debris. That's a separate issue, and I hope the police is investigating, that there's proof or whatever of it, that we could do something. But if you don't have that information, I think if you contact our administrator, we got to get it for you. And I think you'll be able to add to.
I only want to ask one question. I think that since I was a Jericho resident, I can come up here because that's how it's posted. My name is Ellen Faulkner. My
Spell that,
question,
please.
I'll get into Susan later. My question is, who's the blasting authority? Because if this gentleman is getting stuff blasted
State
onto
police.
his property,
State police.
okay, but then the state police says it's local. Because I called the state police and they said it's a local authority.
It is shocking how little authority they have. It just basically has to do with the handling, the storage, and the transportation of explosive materials. They really don't care what they do within the pit. And we have no authority in the pit. Now, what I was going to say from Mr. St. James's point is there are certainly actions you can take as a citizen of Kingston by introducing a warrant article. And one of those warrant articles could be a blasting ordinance that would apply after the fact, once it's passed. So those things can be updated.
Because that's my point, is that I believe that whoever the blasting authority is, and I'm telling you, I called the state police.
Right, but we can't just,
No,
we
but
can't decree ourselves the blasting authority for
My
nothing.
point is the state police says it's local, it's it's either fire or police in the town of Kingston that issues the permit. And my point is, if the permit doesn't allow them to put debris on someone else's property, then I believe that whoever the authority is could not give them a permit. Is the local authority's ability.
And
But-
that's where rewriting or updating the blasting ordinances are appropriate. You can do that.
But to
because-
this point, to my knowledge, and the chief can interject here, but it's merely a courtesy that we're notified by the blasting company that they will be blasting.
Yeah,
Wasn't
that's-
that the gist of it? I mean, that's really the
I
authority we
can
had
call the
as
fire
a.
department, they told me to call the state police, the state police told me it was the local authorities that issue the permit. So I just want somebody to tell me who actually issues it, because I haven't been able to get an answer from that in 2 years. 'Cause I'm-
Short of us having an ordinance, there's nothing that we can enforce.
So the state police thinks there is, so that's why I'm saying, somebody needs to be able to know who actually,
Okay, Ellen.
The only one that issues something is the fire chief, and it's not permission to blast. Am I correct? Actually, you wanna come forward, maybe you can explain what it is?
because my own thing is at this point, gentlemen, we haven't heard anything about stuff that made the national news that happened in that pit. So how's this gentleman supposed to do anything if the state police haven't been able to?
So nobody in the municipality actually issues a permit for someone to be able to blast. The
Okay?
fire chief issues a permit, but it's not for
But it's
permission to blast.
It's just notification.
Right, so, talking to state police, the bomb squad, most towns in the state of New Hampshire don't even have this permit in place. This was established, it is established in most towns and counties in the state of New Hampshire because we need to be notified 24 hours in advance of the blast. So that permit doesn't grant them the right to blast or not to blast. The only thing that permit does is we get a copy of the blaster's license and a copy of their liability insurance, meaning, you know, if something does go wrong, somebody does get hurt, they're covered, you know, to work with the town of Kingston. So, even like I said, most towns don't offer or require a blasting permit, so they just blast and do whatever they want. But, I believe, and I'm not sure, because that was before my tenure here of, you know, requiring a blasting permit. That was because of, you know, the 24-hour notice, and then we get notice, 1 hour before the blast.
So in effect, they get a permit to ensure that they notify us of blasting.
Correct.
Right.
Done.
Who has the
That's
most,
it.
I'm sorry,
That's it.
who has the most authority is the New Hampshire State Police. So if someone got hurt or something took place, it would be the state police would come down.
Have the state police notified the town of any action they were taking about the issue this gentleman brought up about the reveal party? Because I've heard from the town of Kingston
So we-
officials that the town has nothing to do with it. But
No,
has
we-
anyone from this town heard any results from that?
So this is two different things. That was
Well,
a criminal
if-
matter.
if the
Hang on,
If the
hang
state
on.
can't do anything, how's this gentleman supposed to?
The Tannerite incident was a criminal matter that was referred to the appropriate authorities. It does not have anything to do, I mean, obviously a pattern, I gotcha, but the nuts and bolts of that is, that was a criminal activity that took place on that property, and that's taken its own course. So that is outside of this discussion. I get your point that it is a pattern of conduct, but beyond that, that's the limit of it.
They knew about it, and allowed it, too. That's a very important point. You know, if you say.
But they weren't the individuals who perpetrated that particular act. So, beyond that, with regards to this issue, Chief, if debris is raining down in someone's yard, does the state police have any concern or
So what we did, and one of the officers came down to see you and had you fill out a statement. So there is an investigation ongoing by us, which will be sharing that information with the New Hampshire State Police. And at that point, we will sit down with the fire chief, the New Hampshire State Police, and the Kingston Police to decide what way we could move forward from there. I mean, quite some time ago, that's why when I was involved in that down there, I knew it was going to be problematic to blast on that north wall because it was closer to the property. So that's a situation that just needs to be looked at. Like Phil had said, there's a lack of laws and lack of jurisdiction on who actually regulates them. But most of them are regulated by the state because they need a blasting license. Anything that happens as a result of that blast, the only one that would have the authority would be the one that issues the blasting license. So that would be the state of New Hampshire.
And I filed a complaint with I think it's either Sergeant or Lieutenant Dade.
That's right.
And I spoke with
Yeah.
I think Sergeant Flynn.
Yeah.
So that there is, so I'm yet to hear back, but I trust that that is in the works as well.
It is.
Regarding the, to what Mr. St. James, or Selectman St. James was saying, I understand that this was, maybe, I don't know what the distance was, and they can come closer, but that's what my fear is. That's my very fear, that, while this was maybe 200 feet away, next time it's gonna be 150. Next time it's gonna be 100. Next time it's gonna be right next to my wall, 50 feet away. And then I'm gonna have boulders falling on me. So, come on. How can this be legal? How can we say that, the state statute will say one thing and the town ordinance says another, and they're conflicting, and one overrides the other. But at one point, does a human life matter? When all this, and the safety of human life, that's what we need to talk about here. And instead of just, the rule says this, it can blast here, so, not our problem. That's what the guy who was taking the meter of my property said. And I said, you guys just, rained debris on myself and my daughter. Oh, we didn't have anything to do with that. I didn't have anything to do with that. If that's the attitude you guys want to take, you can do better. Please, represent us. Represent us at Jericho. Not Tornado. They don't need any help.
So I'm emailing to Ed Flynn at State Police Bomb Squad. I will follow up with a phone call tomorrow. I did get a visit from, I don't know if it was the owner or the actual blaster from G&M, I believe the day after the blast, to advise me of issues. He said that it was, obviously they're cooperating with State Police. If anything is found to be at fault, then they lose their license, so they don't obviously suspect anything was wrong. Chief Briggs and I did sit with a couple members of the bomb squad 6 months ago on a conference call, and they get a copy of all the seismograph reports, and everything year to date as of then was within normal limits. They do G&M videos of blasts every time, not from your property line, but from behind the blast, I guess. So they provided that to the state police. I did suggest to G&M, and I'll talk to the bomb squad about it tomorrow, that maybe I or somebody, a member representative from the fire department comes to your backyard as like a safety, not to prevent you from being there, but to make sure that nothing does happen, or we require like a blasting detail every time they blast. But some options that recommendations once I talk to the bomb squad and the blasting company and try to figure things out to obviously minimize or eliminate any bodily injury or property damage from residents.
And I'm not asking for the town to shut down Tornado. That's not what I'm asking. I'm asking them to stop just working on that north wall. They have like 150 acres they can work on. They don't need to work on the north wall. That's what's endangering people. Their arrogance on saying, well, this rule says I can do it, so I'm going to do it. And I don't care if anyone's in the way. I don't care about the people in Jericho. They're a bunch of, they're complaining about me, so I'm gonna blast their in spite of them. That's what I feel like's happening. I'm gonna detonate 8 pounds, let someone detonate 8 pounds of time, because you know what? Let those yahoos, have it. They don't care. That's our stance. So they can blast anywhere else in that pit. Blast on the south wall. Blast on the west wall, the east wall. Don't blast on the north wall. They're just so close to our property line. They have options, is what I'm saying. We don't have options.
I guess what I would say is I don't want you to think that none of us care about Jericho Road, because we do. When they stopped the blasting on North Wall, it's only because we asked. We had no authority, and they didn't have to comply. We asked until we could figure out. And they've quite clearly made their intention known that they want to presume their whole pit. I think what was expressed tonight was maybe you want to go to the planning board, you got plenty of time to see about writing some sort of ordinance that could get passed in town. But in other words, I think as selectmen, we are limited. We can only enforce the ordinances and the regulations that are in place. And other than that, we have no authority. As much as you're finding you can't get a lawyer to do anything for you, we think it's going to happen to the town. It's just, we don't have the authority to do it. I think the proper avenue is what was talked about. And you would find some backing.
But I think the other side of that is, this is a new development that wasn't taking place previously, all right? So, to the chief's point, and this is not an offense to your integrity or anything like that, but I think if there were a member of the fire department there witnessing this, that would put more credence in it, and that would, I think, Don, am I wrong on that? I mean, I think if we're witnessing debris in your yard, in your neighbor's yard, and it's someone who's an official from the town there, you know, we can take that further. But I think in the interim, we've got to finish the investigation into the initial incident, and then we can follow up what our options are. But Mr. St. James is right. I mean, it's not like we didn't run this to ground last time to try and figure out what our authority in the situation was. We consulted numerous legal opinions, and we ended up in the same spot. You know where we're at. And it's not something that this board is in the habit of doing and just getting in frivolous lawsuits or things that we can't win. We need to get in, you know, we're only going to engage in legal action if we are going to win. If there's going to be an outcome that we find favorable. And as it looked previously, that wasn't the case. So, again, like I said, this is new information. It changes things as far as I'm concerned. If they're infringing on your property, if there's debris raining down on your property, that is an issue. And that is an issue that needs to be investigated fully. And that's all we can promise you tonight, is that it'll be investigated fully, and we'll take the action that we can from that.
And as mentioned, I do have it, you know, you can hear some debris falling through the woods. I will continue to document this. It's my property. I have a right to stand on my property where I see fit. If I get killed on my property by debris, well, you know, there'll be, I'm sure, action taken to follow up on that. But I don't feel I should have to shelter when this happens. It's my land. And, you know, when it comes time that they do hurt somebody, and they will, hear me first, they will, and that would be a much more difficult conversation to have with all you folks.
There are some communities, correct me if I'm mistaken, that have either a regulation or an ordinance that requires them to have a fire officer or a fire department member on scene anytime there is any blasting. And I think that's something we could look for regulation that we could implement. Maybe if you could get a sample copy for that. That I think we would institute that regulation requiring them to pay for the cost of having a fire officer on scene at any time that there's going to be any blasting. Not only at home, but any place in Kingston. That would be my recommendation.
I just want to ask a question, Team Branigan, I couldn't hear you back here, it's hard to listen back here, fine. About the grandfather in issue, I have to ask again, because it's been about a year now that we've been talking about, you know, at first, I know it was, yes, it was your responsibility, you set regulations, even the state told us it was your responsibility to enforce the buffer. You have come back and said nobody's grandfathered in. To date, I have still not seen any documentation. You're telling me legal counsel is telling me this. I want to know how 100% you can tell me
he's grandfathered in. When we've asked for the paperwork, there is no paperwork, and he has to have legal documentation to be grandfathered in. We want to see it, because guess what? If you don't have it, how is he grandfathered in?
Because he's
someone
been
told
here.
you?
He's been here. He's been here since the 70s, darling. He's been
I
here.
want to see the paper he signed before 1989, isn't that he was supposed to sign. That gets him grandfathered in. That's right in the RSA that you guys showed me. Where is the legal documentation that Torromeo is grandfathered in? And if you don't have it, how are you 100% sure he is? How am I 100% sure? How are we your neighbors 100% sure he's grandfathered in? Because we've seen nothing. You keep saying there's something, or your legal counsel tells you, I want to see the
Have you gone
documentation.
and looked at his property file at all?
We have called and asked for this documentation. Yes, is he supposed to have this? Yes, where's the paper? We don't have it.
Wasn't the part they're supposed to have it, like no longer in existence or something?
Yeah.
So how do you know he's grandfathered in? You don't.
Yeah,
That's my
okay, so to your question, we do not have that paperwork, you're correct.
So
And
how-
as Mr., hang on, let me finish, please. As Mr. Taglieri pointed out, the state entity that was responsible for that no longer exists.
You're supposed to.
I need to finish, thank you. Our lawyer has told us that it is an unwinnable situation to say that he didn't file it because we lost the paperwork, or we don't have it. It's an unwinnable situation because all he has to say is, I filed it, which he said.
Well, I can do that with my taxes then. I paid you. You don't have to say, no, I paid you.
If you said you paid us in 1986, then yes, you may have a case, but nobody on this board can sit here and definitively say that he did or did not pay that.
You feel comfortable saying, well, we'll just say he's grandfathered in. When there's not a stitch of paperwork to prove that?
There's an RSA that
That's
definitively proves
ridiculous.
that.
What's that?
There is an RSA that definitively states that he is grandfathered in. You
I
found
see
an
that.
obscure one that stated he needed to file a piece of paperwork in 1986 that we do not have, and the entity no longer exists that would have administered that.
The RSA does state.
Who gets away with that today?
The RSA does state it is the owner's responsibility to be able to furnish this documentation.
Exactly.
That's
So
what's in the
then at
RSA.
least you go after him and say, where's that documentation? You're right, and thank you for reminding me of that. The RSA, which you're referring to, clearly says it is his responsibility, even if the town doesn't have it. So where's the responsibility on Torromeo to provide that he's grandfathered in?
Again, I'm going to refer on legal counsel versus your opinion on the matter.
But you want, then I want to know, show me what your legal counsel is saying. Because you can just tell me my legal counsel is saying this. But you can't prove anything. That would hold up nowhere. How do you expect us to
But
believe that?
that RSA, I believe, was written in 1986. When was that RSA written? And he was there in 79. He was there in 76. He was there in 71.
Yes, but
He was there prior, operating as a legal entity.
But
Prior
then
to
the
that.
RSA came out and said, in order to be grandfathered in, he had to have that paperwork.
Okay,
And that's
listen,
seriously gone.
if you'd like that paperwork,
Yeah.
if you'd like that, we can submit in writing from our legal counsel what he told us regarding that matter. And please submit your request to Susan, and we can get that for you.
I would like to see the paperwork that he's grandfathered in. What other business can operate
Okay.
and say they're
We just
grandfathered
addressed your
in?
concern, ma'am. We just addressed your concern. If you'd like, you can contact our administrative assistant and we'll get you that paperwork.
I think we've asked for it multiple times.
Okay.
Over the past year. And this is again the frustration.
No, you specifically just asked for written documentation from our legal counsel stating our position on the matter, which we will provide to you. Is there anything else?
And if you can't provide it, that RSA says that
Thank you.
Torrey has to.
I appreciate your thoughts on the matter, but we have people who tell us what that really means. So,
Okay, so what have they told you that you're comfortable with?
you requested it in writing, we'll provide it to you. Is there anything further that we can assist you with this evening?
Yes, I'm wondering why you are comfortable with them, your legal counsel just telling you, yes, they're grandfathered in.
Because I'm a farmer, not a lawyer. So I trust people who are tradespeople in certain aspects of life.
Then, right, but wouldn't it be wise to say, I want to see proof of that?
Which I just said we'll provide to you if you request it.
So, you're going to provide proof that he's grandfathered in?
No, I'm going to provide written documentation from our legal counsel that states our position on the matter.
Which is,
We're going to provide it to you.
I'm sorry?
We will provide it to you. We've just summarized it 3 times in this meeting.
Okay, can you say it one more time, please? You're going to provide legal documentation?
We are going to provide written documentation of our legal counsel's opinion on the matter that you're asking about.
Okay, but,
I'm just gonna say it's unwinnable in court. They don't have it, so they're gonna say it's unwinnable in court. That's all you're gonna say.
any one of us, if we operated that way with paying a bill, a mortgage, or anything else, and said, I have proof, this is what I can do, and can provide absolutely no documentation, that's ridiculous. And I don't think you guys should feel comfortable with that, knowing maybe there is a slight chance, guess what? He's not grandfathered in. And then guess what? Every single one of you have been allowing that to go on. That's not right. You should want to feel comfortable knowing, I know we have this legal documentation that he's grandfathered in. None of us would get away with that with anything else, with any type of business transaction or anything.
Thank you for your time tonight, Selectmen. I just request that you ask them to maybe do something more than a 5-foot wall, because it's not gonna stop even a small dog from running. And, to look into the matter of debris falling on my property and endangering the life of my family. That's all I ask.
Thanks for coming in. All right, our last scheduled appointment. No name?
They're not coming. The man is ill and couldn't be here, but basically you've got a map in front of you. He owns lot 214, wants to purchase 216 and 217 that he surrounds. And he knew that we were going through the process of selling some of the property, and I said we're going to do those, see how it works, and turn around. His fear is that people will start buying properties that don't need them and try to sell them to the property owners at, extorted rates. And I said, even though we're going to auction them off, we have the right to refuse any bid, and that our goal is to give them to abutters.
But do you have the right to refuse any bid?
Yeah, that's what Summer said. His recommendation was to auction it off with the right to refuse any bid. So.
Can I ask Susan, what are these in relation to the 2 parcels that SEC did survey?
These aren't the same.
What?
These aren't the same ones.
They are?
Are not.
No, I know. Where is those?
175 is the one we got back. It's also in U4. It's up at the top of it. Like under the
Yeah.
bar.
I mean, we're not in a position to sell it, so he doesn't have to worry about that.
That's
And so, as far as I'm concerned, we can't even get the survey out there for 2 more parcels of land, and we're just going to delay it even longer. And the original purpose of the whole thing with these trees, that's a liability for the town. I can't wait for 2 more lands to be surveyed. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed if they're already surveyed to include them, but they have to be surveyed.
I just don't think we can derail the train at this point for.
That's basically, I said we have to go through the process of the ones we're doing now, because we want to see how it works. And
Yeah.
Yeah, we gotta stick with that once a year, because otherwise
Right.
you'll never get anything done.
Right.
Okay. That will bring us to our first public comment of the evening. Ms. Faulkner.
Just a quick bit of information, because I don't think anyone around the table was there at the time, and this goes back to the library. The library did go to the budget committee and the selectmen once about whether or not they wanted the library to do a capital reserve fund for anything to do with replacement of things in the building, like the roof and things like that. and they were told that it's a town building. They didn't want another capital reserve fund for another town building, and if they needed anything, they'd just add more money to the existing building and maintenance capital reserve fund, because it is a town building, and therefore the town has to maintain the maintenance and operation of the building itself. The library trustees can't own the building, they can only own the functions inside. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, because it had been previously discussed, but none of you all were there. So that's all.
Thank you. Rick?
Yeah, I know it's late, so I'll be quick. The landfill thing really should be a no-brainer, and we should try to move it along as fast as we can, because once they get a backlog up there, it'll take forever, so. And for me, the issue will be the town connection with the school committee, school board and that kind of stuff, and maybe you can help with us.
Yeah, I already texted Matt Angel, who's the business administrator, told him
Right.
looking at solar panels, is he interested? He said yes.
And I've talked with Dan Doyle, who's the facilities director, and he's interested in all that kind of stuff, so he's certainly on board, but obviously.
I can't imagine they wouldn't be.
Sure, and if you end up like having a subcommittee or something, you want Glenn City.
We'll put you on it.
Well, I'd be happy if Glenn would also be on it if you
Okay.
decided you want to do something like
good.
that in conjunction with board members or what have you, so hope we can do something.
Excellent.
Great.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Committee liaison reports.
I want to say kudos to the people on the Kingston Days Committee. They've done a tremendous job of pulling together an event for the weekend of August 6th, 7th, and 8th. I wasn't sure they had the experience to do it, but they've been working their butts off. Carol Carbonos, Charlotte Vinciguerra, Donna Delacour, who handled all the entertainment, and there's others, Pat and I'm going to forget it, somebody, treasurer. They've done a yeoman's job in pulling this together. The only thing that could stop its success was a really crappy weather, because they've done everything possible to keep the costs down, to make sure there were plenty of activities. So I want to say hats off to Kingston Days Committee for a job well done.
Okay.
And don't forget to get your cow patty deeds.
And don't forget to buy your cow patties, exactly. Thank you, Kevin.
History book.
Hang on, you're skipping me.
Yeah, skipping you. History book, you're last, you're the privileged one. The history book is selling well, at the rate of 6 to 8 books a day.
Really?
So we're at about the halfway point. Doing very well. We expect to sell a lot at Kingston Days. I have a planning board issue that is down in a new business that I'll deal with then.
Met a couple times with Paul Butler in regards to the playground. He'll be at Kingston Days, so there'll be a booth at Kingston Days trying to sell bricks for $100 for a 4x8 brick or a 8x8 brick for $250, and different sponsorship levels for that. They're actively trying to raise money for the playground over at Como Field, the Stepping Stones Playground. I don't know if anyone heard or if I mentioned it last time, but our newest bank that's coming to town, Partners Bank, has already challenged them. If they can raise $10,000, they'll match $10,000 for that playground. So I would ask residents or anyone interested in the playground to purchase bricks at Kingston Days at the table there, or consider in the future getting a brick.
Is that in lieu of cow patties?
No, the cow patties is separate for Kingston Days.
In addition to.
Yeah.
Fun.
I have nothing.
Okay. Inspectors met on Thursday. Rich had come up with a really good spreadsheet on kind of making our permit process more efficient.
A little more organized.
Yeah, organize things. The one thing I was going to ask, if you have a contact over at the old SLS building?
I do.
Did they submit a letter for a business occupancy permit?
They have.
They did, I thought so. Their sign is too big though, so you may want to let them know. Their sign is outside of the sign ordinance and they did not get a sign permit. So that was all I had. All right.
Isn't that, just out of curiosity, wouldn't that be something the code enforcement should be doing?
Yes.
So he doesn't have to make a phone call.
Well,
Yeah.
yes, Kevin.
There's a pre-established relationship there that he knows the people to talk to, so rather than sending Mike in to kick doors in. All right, old business. We received the updated welfare guidelines. We just need to vote to approve them this evening.
And I must say that Mrs. Faulkner did yeoman's job in the details, and I actually read it.
I did too.
And there was a lot of work that went into updating those forms, all those forms. And I want to thank you for that.
That's the only reason why I'm here, really. I just excuse me on this too. When you have any questions or anything, I thought I'd be here in case you did before you got the things.
So I'll make a
So next
motion.
time you want to put me on first, so I go home and not tell you.
Well, do we need to make a motion or is a signature on this?
You need a vote.
I move that we adopt the revisions to the welfare policies and procedures.
And I'll second that motion.
Okay, motion and second. Further discussion.
I'm assuming though, it helps us that we're the Lawrence region versus, Southern region?
I will tell you that a report came out today that actually says the average in Rockingham County for a two-bedroom is like 1,600. But we've always gone by HUD averages.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that, based on reality, we couldn't pay more if we felt we needed to. But you have to have guidelines that set what the limits are, and you can't just be arbitrary or, well, I read it in the paper. You need something that's your backup in court, and that's what we use.
And just to prove I read it, it was only the one bedroom that changed, not the
Yes.
other, so.
I was surprised they didn't change more, but they're up to date. Next year they'll jump up a lot.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Sign it as it goes around. All right. Consolidated Communications Settlement Request. So we had a Zoom call with them on Tuesday? Monday. They've sent over the inventory of poles and conduit, etc. We did get a hold of Fred Smith. Fred did a re-evaluation for us free of charge. That's nice of him. He wished to lower the tax bill by $2,400 from their 2017 assessment. So I'll bring that back to them because we do have documentation from it. We're working through it. There's still information out there that we need, I believe.
They asked for the information on the polls that we had to give to them, and I didn't have it, so reached out to you guys.
Yeah, that was today, right?
It's today, it was last week.
Okay, I just saw it today.
So that they're looking for a little more information to show what you're saying about the poll count.
The double poles.
Yeah.
Didn't I send that to you?
Yeah, we have that. I don't think there's any. What happened was the DRA came up with basically, here's what you get to charge for a pole, here's what you charge per foot of conduit, here's what you charge for this. So there's nothing in there for double poles. And if they're within 5 feet, we really don't. The only recourse we have is to put a complaint, and you've been on those calls, with the Public Utilities Commission. And it's not like something that we're missing out on assessments on.
No, I didn't think it was on assessments, but I thought it was on a nuisance. It was a set RSA that they could only have so many double poles before they have to take action on it.
And so we need to file a complaint with the Public Utilities Commission, is basically what we're being told. Because
Yes.
they don't have the resources to fix those now, and it's
So,
It's another utility in town will be taking the initiative to replace those if the Public Utilities Commission instructs them to do so. But right now, they do not have the authority to replace a pole unless instructed to do so.
Here's the thing, I get it. I get it. Let's just say Unitil is going to take over their poles. The issue is, it's only their line that's on the old pole. Unitil's already moved to the new pole. Comcast has already moved to the new pole. It's only their line, so they are the only ones that can move their line. That's all well and good that you can say they don't have capacity. You're supposed to have capacity, and you should. That's what I agree. I think the first step would be file a complaint with the Public Utility Commission.
Yeah, and we can sit down and do that this week. But yeah, we heard that from a very reliable source that stated nothing's going to happen unless we file a complaint.
Yeah, I can.
That's our.
Because Unitil taking over the pole doesn't help us, because Consolidated still has to move their line. Unitil's not going to help.
I will say, to their credit, as they've been doing the fiber, they have been pulling off of the old double. Well, the ones that are directly in front of my house, they moved them off of there after 5 years. So I was really proud of them for doing that. Way to go get them. But
by that standard, they should have done all of them, because they touched every single pole with Kingston.
yes. Yeah. I may have. I don't think there's anything illegal I could cover on that. But anyway, it's going back. Holiday pay for Juneteenth.
Basically, I asked Cindy for the exact copy of policies, and it does list the federal holidays. It doesn't say federal holidays with a blanket list. It's federal holidays, and then list each and every one, and obviously the brand new holiday is not listed. As far as the police and fire station, they are supposed to pay time and a half to anybody that works that shift on a holiday, and give them an 8-hour floating holiday. And then anybody else would, working a holiday, get an 8-hour floater too, if we decide to pass that.
But seeing as it wasn't recognized as a holiday by the town, we don't need to pay for it.
Right, but at the same time, you've talked about doing things for our employees, even if it's not 8 hours to do this.
Yep, that's,
I don't know if we want to.
I don't.
I told you I would look into it, and I did, and that's
I
what it
appreciate
is.
that. Armed with that knowledge, how does the board want to proceed?
Well, not to open a can of worms, but the town's policies and procedures haven't been updated since, I think, 2006 anyways. I think it's...
don't even go there, Jesus.
I know, but...
We haven't got enough to do.
If I was more concerned with the people that are actually working the holidays being fairly stipend for them.
Well, everybody worked that holiday since they made
That
it.
is correct, but usually it tends to be unfair on the first responders, whether it's police or fire. But with that being said, I just think we should adopt it, and just another unfunded mandate that came down from the federal government. Thank you very much. But I think on the bigger question, we do need to open up our policy procedures and start working on those. And I'd be willing to do that, start on them anyways.
Well, maybe we should do what we do with the planning board, everybody take a section. Not bring in a full policy and divide it up.
Yeah, in January.
Read it and analyze it.
I'll take the last section, so you're not counting on me anytime soon.
So what's your pleasure, gentlemen? I know what your pleasure is.
Well, I'm just saying, if the board so chooses, we can recognize it as a holiday for next year, but it's not something we recognize as a holiday, and it's in direct violation of our policies and procedures. Everybody already worked that day. We're basically trying to play catch up with something that we didn't know existed, and it's going to cost the town a lot of money. So I would be opposed to recognizing and back paying this. That's fine.
But adding it to the holiday list for 2022?
I think that's worth a discussion as we update the policies and procedures.
Okay.
Well, I've kind of changed my mind since the policy or the thing names each and every holiday, because I was told in the beginning it said federal holidays, so.
So I'll make a motion that we add Juneteenth to the 2022 list of federal holidays.
Second.
Can I see that? Okay, we got a motion and a second. Further discussion?
Second page, and it carries over to the third page. Discussion?
I think we already discussed it.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, Saddle Up Saloon, extension of temporary outdoor music permission.
What I want to do is extend it to August 17th, which is when they come in the planning board. They asked for continuance because several of the things they were doing was not ready. And also at the time of the meeting, they had not had a chance to play any music because of the weather.
Oh, too bad.
And regardless, we've got the sound guy out there with his equipment out there every weekend. It's a little different than I thought. He's got a machine that he puts there and doesn't have to stay with it. So basically we're paying for the setup and then it sits there for the weekend. So we're not like paying for 3 trips to check price area and set it.
You say we pay over.
Well, it's coming out of their bond.
Okay, gotcha.
But he's not, I thought we were paying him like to go out there each and every night. We don't. He goes and sets it up Friday afternoon on the abutter's property and it monitors for the weekend and then he picks it up and analyzes it.
Have you had any early results at all?
Yes, and they're minor. I mean, they're what you would expect. They're playing this type of music.
Okay, they're acoustical guitar more than anything else.
Or modified electric, you know, they're not doing anything like they've done in the past.
And that's because we're monitoring them.
Mm-hmm.
Which you or I would do the same thing.
Yes, I
So, anyway, for technical reasons, I want to extend it to August 17th, which is the next time it will be at the planning board.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Second.
Okay, motion and second. Further discussion?
I wasn't here for the opportunity to discuss last time this came up. And what I would say is, I think the proper procedure for this is go to the planning board. All right, so let the planning board decide whether they're gonna change their ordinance, their site plan or whatever, because what they're trying to do, that has been a restaurant as long as I've been in Kingston, and I'm sure as long as you've been there, it was a road stand back in the day.
Hot dogs.
I haven't.
And it was a very good restaurant. They did a good job as a restaurant. And what they're trying to do is turn it into a nightclub. It was never designed to be a nightclub. When the previous owners before Rick, the Pondview, I remember the limousines going on Friday and Saturday night, and I remember them having weddings there. And neighbors never complained. They operated inside, and it was never an issue for them to make money or for anything. It was what the new owners are trying to do is change it from a restaurant to a nightclub. And they can have a nightclub. There's a whole room inside dedicated for music that fits their site plan as it exists. They're trying to alter it, and they did it without permission, hiding under the governor's emergency orders, and everything else. I am not in favor of this. Let them do what they're doing. Go to the planning board.
It's the planning board's recommendation to do this so they could get, a sample of music. And they're trying to solve an issue because they say they can do outdoor entertainment. Planning board says, there's never been an approval, but the past owners of the Pondview were here to testify the night about how many outside events they've done and how much outdoor music they've done. So we're trying to clarify.
Okay, but just because they did it illegally doesn't make it legal.
Well, we're not sure whether it's illegal or not. That's what we're trying to get to. But they were told at the planning board meeting, just because you pass all these sound levels does not mean you're going to get approval. has nothing to do with it. This is just an example to see.
Yeah, but you see,
And
of
we
course
know-
they're having a one-man
We
band,
know
they're not
they're
playing highway to hell.
Everybody knew they were gonna do that.
Yeah, so why? We got it, that's it. Now let the planning board decide what they're gonna do. I say pass it on to the planning board, but I don't want for the residents, they never signed up for it. I'd be curious today, driving by, suddenly they're aerating the pond. Is that within their purview? There is a pump going and shooting a fountain in the
That's
pond.
been talked about for a year, Karen.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
So you're way behind time.
Okay, well, I just never saw it before, it's there
It's
now.
been there for a year.
It's been
DES
there
has
a
been
long
called,
Okay.
everything. But we're doing this because the planning board asked for it. Because we're trying to clarify some stuff and put this together.
I'm not in favor of it. It's-
Then
it's-
vote no. Then vote no.
And I will. Not a nice one.
Okay, anybody else? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Okay, 3-2.
Okay,
August
well.
17th.
Sleep well. You can't hear the music from your house.
Okay. When you play.
New business, Carriage Museum.
Carriage Museum on Marshall Road sent a letter in to the planning board with what they were doing, operating about 3 to 4 hours every Saturday. Planning board didn't see any way that they could approve this without a full site plan, whether it could be modified or full. There's no, I mean, if it comes to them, they have to go through the procedures. Their suggestion was possibly the selectmen write a special event process once a month.
Boy, they love dishing out stuff to the select board, don't they?
Once a month. So it would allow the guy to do his hobby 4 hours a month. And if you don't want to do that, then they're going to tell him he has to go through site plan review.
That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard.
Guys,
I actually went
it's
over the
procedure.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so the procedure should be, I'll move that we grant him an annual permit to open 4 hours every Saturday that he wants to. Annually. So he can come and ask us every year. Because I think anything more than that is wasteful.
Is it his own personal carriages?
Yeah.
Yes.
So it has nothing to do with these carriages?
Nothing. Yeah, I went and did a walkthrough. It's like, I mean,
Few people.
actually the owners here,
Yeah, I know.
I mean, there's very few people that go there. There's no traffic. There's maybe 2 cars all. I mean, you're gonna find it's low key, low. I mean,
Does it charge any money?
I don't think he charges anything. You don't charge any money.
Accepts donations.
Except that, I mean, it's really like a hobby thing that really isn't even a business.
So, didn't the planning board just pass a whole thing 2 years ago about agritourism being exempt?
It's not considered agriculture. We went all through that, tried to figure out a way to make it agriculture. Can't come up with a way to make it that.
Can't.
I mean, we, you know, like I said, we're trying to take the initiative of being more proactive, and we could not find a way to make it work in planning board rules. And that's why they suggested that if we bring it in here, we can offer the special event.
I'd make a motion that we allow it 6 months, 1 Saturday a month, and that we review it after 6 months.
She just made a motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I move that we grant them the permission for annually to operate any Saturday for up to 4 hours that they want.
Every month?
For up to a year, and then a year from now they would come back and.
For 1 year?
For 1 year,
1 Saturday a month.
right.
I'll second that.
Do you want to ask them how they feel about that?
Gentlemen, do you want to say anything? Or have any?
Not particularly. I got rid of them a long time ago. And now that I'm getting old, I need a hobby. And I just collect some in the store. I used to be a stained glass store. And I just thought I'd let the public come in and see them there as well. And a lot of them are geared toward Kingston. And I only have one made in Kingston. It's one that was made at that farm. And then I offered, we are charging for carriage rides. I said that it's $5 a ride because I pay the horse and driver because we've been getting 6 or 7 a week as far as people. The library just called me, wanting to set up an event so they can bring some parents and children in to see it. And everyone who has come in has really appreciated it, and they like the concept. So I'd like to continue it. One day a month with me is fine, because I don't get decide I'll be out there every Saturday.
I said any Saturday you want, whatever Saturday you want, for 1 year.
Yeah.
And then a year from now you come back and ask to renew the permit or not. How's that sound?
What?
And then a year from now you come back and ask to renew the permit if you want.
Yeah, all right, no, the first Saturday of the month would be fine.
Whatever Saturday you want. I'm not even telling you which Saturday to do it. You can do any Saturday you want.
The first Saturday of the month,
Okay.
we'll do it that way.
Okay.
That'll save me a bunch of money and all this time. In other words, we have the time so they can come. Right now, we're getting very few people. The first week we had like 20 because of the newspaper. And after that, maybe 10 the second week. This week, right, I had 3, and 2 of them were nephews of mine. So, I mean, that's what we had while I'm out there paying the carriage.
So you only want to do it one Saturday a month.
Excuse me?
You only want to do it one Saturday a month.
No, yeah, you're giving me an excuse.
Okay, we'll be the fall guy. One Saturday a month, first Saturday of the month for a year.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So just so I'm clear, like when the library does an event over there, do we require them to put a special flip or the historical museum?
One more thing, like if someone wants to have a special event, that would be a problem. There won't be a carriage right there, but like if the library wants to bring children over, I'm happy to open it.
That's why I say you could have any Saturday you want,
Well,
up to 4
Why don't
hours.
we do 15 a year? 15 a year?
Excuse me?
15 events a year or 20 events a year? Does that work?
Far fewer.
So 15, why don't we do 15 events a year? That way if you have a special event,
I would think 60 would be enough, but yeah.
Okay, that's good. That'll work. Because you might not do it in
If
January.
they
or
call, I
February.
just want to say no.
I like the 15 events a year. That way you don't have to do it in January or February.
We'll not give sleigh rides this year.
Oh, there you go. Okay,
All right, thank you.
we'll change my motion to 15 events, 15 Saturdays a year.
Second.
I'll wait for the vote, it's the biggest part.
hey, waited all night.
We'd like to invite you folks to come over and check out the museum.
We should do that.
I've been there, done a great job, looks good. I went over and visited.
Yeah, thank you.
I got the special tour.
I bet you did, Chief.
Let's vote before he walks out again.
All right, all those in favor? Aye. Thank you, gentlemen. New business? Not yet. We have board business.
No, we're on new business.
Oh, okay, yes, we're on new business. Go ahead.
I'd like to revisit, I got a phone call from a resident, and I have to agree with them. I understand during COVID why we did it, but I think that the sign at the end of the planes to say Kingston resident parking only a little bit tacky and uninviting. And I really think, like I said, during the COVID, other people coming here and everything else, and it's getting to be obnoxious, but we're back to normal
Have
crowds.
you looked at that parking area during the weekends and during the week?
The weekends is overflow from the state park, I think, but during the week, it's.
But it allows Kingston people to park, and we're gonna put slots down the road.
I agree with Rich. I drove by there on a Saturday morning at 10 o'clock and they were like all the way past George Corn's house.
I've been driving by during the week and I see nothing. Weekends have always been that way.
But we're trying to give our residents a place to park.
People who are paying the good money for these things to look beautiful and be nice and,
There.
Did you make that a motion? Okay. Yeah, I can't support it either.
Okay.
And I like the sound, I think that residents should have
Bring it up.
priorities. And you can let the constituent know that you do
But we can
that.
make some nicer ones so they don't look so tacky.
Well, they'll probably.
That's compromise right there, buddy.
They change anyway when we put the
With
spots
this-
down the
this
street. they'll
Parking
change.
spaces, yeah.
Yeah, once you do that, that's gonna take care of the problem. How long before that's gonna happen? You know?
Rich wants to do it in the fall.
Okay.
Anything else under new business, Doug?
No, that's it.
Okay. Board business. Right to know law.
Ellen attended this webinar, she gave me all the printouts, and she just distilled it into a few things that are interesting that they have changed. And I'll give you a
Yeah.
printout of the highlights.
Basically, be careful.
You got nothing else to do up there in Concord.
It's just getting more and more carried away.
Maintain a list of all
All right.
our meetings.
Well, I would peruse these.
So
Thank
just
you,
make an
Alicia.
annual calendar, put the selectmen's meeting on every night we meet, and then edit it at the end of the month, and then you're all set.
All right. Seeing no public. Correspondence. We have a request to have a raffle for Kingston Days from the Hampstead Kingston Republican Committee. They've done this in the past, I do believe.
I think so.
So this requires a permit.
I make a motion to authorize them to do their gun raffle.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Happy raffle. Trust funds report, what am I looking at there?
Trust funds.
Sorry, I think there's a typo there. There's a note from Rich Tremblay to Cindy, with his June report, a note about 20,000 in unrealized gain.
There was a question whether the Kingston Days raised $20,000.
And it looks like it was just because they moved funds, it looked like they had 20,000 unrealized gains.
I wondered if it had anything to do with the book.
I bet it had everything to do with the book, because you can't look at the Kingston Days account and figure out what's going on. Because they got the book in 4 places in 2 different sheets of paper, so that's what I think it is too.
So with that in mind, after this year, the book being published, have we sorted all this out?
Yes.
Do we have all these little mystery funds?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna voice my objection to having had it in the Kingston Day. It should have gone as a special account or under contingency, because if we didn't have anything in, I understand what you're telling me before, that we needed some place to put it. And you two, you're
I
right.
think you'll be happy with the outcome when it's finished.
I just don't want to
Doesn't
see
make it right though for proper
It was
bookkeeping.
terrible bookkeeping.
Well,
The bookkeeping side of it, but it was supposed to be done for the 325th, and we did not have any place that we could legally put it because of the
Okay.
constraints we had, and it was,
That's correct.
I wasn't involved in that.
I think COVID had something to do with it, right?
Absolutely.
Might as well blame COVID as well as anything else. Okay. It's a beautiful book, don't get me wrong.
It is a very nice book.
I think there are a lot of lessons learned in the book.
Glenn,
In more ways than one.
there is an email regarding suggestion for grant funds.
Are we gonna meet collectively to talk about those funds?
Glenn Koppelman suggested they cite on 111 for the wells that we've talked about.
Yeah.
Cindy and I did listen to a webinar today. We did get a lot of new information, but we do have the access to the person who can help. They hired a consultant at the state level that is there to answer questions and give us guidance on these things. So I think I put a note on here, but we'll put it off to the next meeting, get a better list together, and then you wanted to talk about it with the.
I think we should consider for water infrastructure,
Yeah. But we can't wait for the August 29th department head meeting. We'll have to, I mean, I think we should meet before the deadline
Yes.
to talk about
I
this.
think we could at least have someone call the state master if that's something that's possible.
We'll have ourselves registered before the deadline of August 18th. That's
Oh,
all we
okay,
have to do
all
is
right.
register.
All right.
We have time to put our ideas together and submit.
Danny's been in touch.
Yeah.
So we have time to discuss that, but if there's anything big, we want to do it soon, so.
And same thing for the solar array, if that's part, if we could tap that for that as well.
Cindy is looking into the financial shortfall, because that makes it easier for us to use the money for other things.
Yes.
She'll have that report for next meeting also.
Okay, something about broadband.
Yeah,
just
forget it.
For the
We're getting fired
15
up.
residents on that. On that.
All right,
For the next, that might be non-public, I'm not sure. It's just a notification of the vacation.
Do we have some of that, an alternative to videotape?
I don't know what you said, but you probably shouldn't have said it.
No, I said, do we have some alternative to do videotaping?
Oh, I don't think so.
No. But we need to find out what they do at the library. They think they've got some kind of magic button box for sound for the, that was for Zoom anyways. It won't help us here.
yeah, that's just a Bluetooth thing.
Yeah.
It's that circle thing in the middle, it's the same
Yeah,
thing.
and well, that doesn't do us any good here.
No, especially since we don't do Zoom anymore.
That's true.
We get a lot of advertisement on the internet that we can announce at that night.
Okay, the other thing, there's a memorandum in here regarding the arrangement of the office downstairs. I don't know if everybody's seen this.
Yeah.
I'd say go with it.
So,
We haven't talked about it, but I'd like to talk about maybe getting some more office hours. I'd like to see the permit clerk open at 8. You don't know, everybody doesn't have to come in at 8, but I don't mind switching the offices. I understand they need to get some more
Can
room.
we talk about rearranging and then talk about that?
so I guess my 2 cents on this, I spoke to Cindy about it. I told Cindy to go ahead and get some noise canceling headphones. It is very loud in there. And then we talked about the headset thing. I still think that's a worthwhile investment just because there's always gonna be background chatter.
Yeah, and she was talking about getting them for the phone system, not just, I have some for the computer, but it doesn't cancel all the noise.
Just get better ones if they don't work on the
Yeah,
computer.
we can do that.
And I thought that was something that we could cover the cost of. So that she
Yeah.
can perform her duties. I don't wanna rush into this, and here's why. We just did a major remodel downstairs, and granted, we knew there was gonna be some moving pieces and parts to finalize it, but I think this is it. This is the last time we're moving all the desks around and the drops and the outlets and everything like that. We just need to decide how it's gonna be down there.
And I'll add to that, it's been extremely loud the last couple of weeks and probably will be for another week while we're doing a lot of training and issues are going on. So that should be better. I mean, I'm there 20, 30 hours a week, where normally I'm there 4 or 5 hours a week. So that's one person out of the mix right there. And, other people will be out of the office a lot more than, are in there now, so.
We'll see how it works out. It has been pretty bad in the past.
It is an issue though. When I'm in there, I don't try to talk on the phone.
What are we looking for furniture and stuff?
They just,
We don't know yet.
we didn't need anything new, we were just swapping the rooms.
I think if you read through the memorandum, what it's proposing is, this would actually, I'm in favor of this configuration because it would actually give us a place to
That's my point.
have a
We might have
laptop.
something.
I mean, and we still have a stage, so that'd be great. And it addresses that, it separates things out. I just wanna make sure that everybody has reviewed this, everybody's on board, and this takes into account future growth, which I think it does, considering that one one of those slots will be empty in the,
I've been analyzing it with them for over a week and it makes sense. It's just I want to do a lot of measuring and
yeah.
stuff like that.
So if we leave everything the way it is now in the big room,
We're gonna shift a little bit of stuff.
or can I find one more desk to win with?
I would never turn down a desk.
Well, I'm just saying,
Say that to him.
I need to know what I'm looking for so I can make the call.
Oh, let's talk tomorrow.
Okay?
I wouldn't, seeing you brought it up, I wouldn't be opposed to still looking, I know it was like, oh my God, how dare we even think of doing it, but doing something behind that stage, because when we last brought it up, nothing has happened behind that stage. Crazy.
Showed you, didn't they?
I am disappointed that every week we go non-public and we do it in this office or we do it before meetings and you can hear everything out there.
It's not non-public.
Okay? And we either need to do it downstairs, but even that doesn't work.
The advantage is no one's here.
Exactly.
The whole reason
But
it makes it
I don't see, there's no reason we can't do something behind that stage that we talked about before, because this is a meeting hall.
But if we
can't
do,
hold
it eliminates the use of the stage in the future.
Yep.
All right, so the question to ask is, when was the last time you used that stage or anything other than
Storage.
a screen or storage?
Good point. I mean, just so we know in the future it won't be used.
There you go. That makes it simple, doesn't it?
I think the larger issue was handicap accessibility by putting that in there. It's basically taking that whole wall out.
There's some other thoughts too. I mean, you could move a kitchen up here.
And we don't even need a kitchen. We could have a nice little conference room downstairs. I mean, really, do we really need a kitchen?
Well, it'd be nice to have a place to eat lunch and stuff if you're here all day to get away from your desk.
Yeah, we're working on employee retention.
Yeah, but again.
Can we go make a meeting in the tramp house?
They do outside.
Well, all right, we'll do some measuring and everything on this other and come back with.
I think Kevin brings up a good point though. I mean, we need to maximize the space in here. That isn't maximizing the space. Having all this stuff in here. Yeah.
Then when there's talk about sending the code enforcement guy to Rich in that building, since he's gonna be working with that.
Yeah, that's an idea.
And quite a bit, and that would eliminate a person downstairs and eliminate noise downstairs. So, I mean, there's just some more thoughts to put into this.
Fair enough.
In this room down in the highway garage, I mean, he's got a small office there anyways.
It's a small office, but no one's ever in it. You know, they're out typically most of the time.
Yeah, it's interesting.
All right.
She's got another point she wants.
But I did want to raise the issue. It's my understanding that a lot of times there are contractors looking for permits early in the morning, and early not being 9 o'clock, more like 8 o'clock. And I'd like to consider switching somehow so we help the public a little more and expand the public opportunity for service. And one of them would be the permitting process, to have Tori come in at 8 instead of 9 and extend the hours of the town hall services.
Now, just to go off that, one of the goals is to have all of our permitting online before long.
Okay?
Because almost every town in the area has done it. If some of these small towns have done it, we should be able to do it pretty easy.
Doesn't mean we shouldn't have someone
No, it doesn't.
on the selectman side of the
It
building.
would eliminate the need to come to town hall that you have now. You have a must to come to town hall.
Correct.
And if we had forms out in the hall where people could pick up forms at 8 o'clock, it would be nice. Now they're all in the
That's
office
another-
where they can't get
Yeah,
to them.
I agree. And as you well know, a lot of these contractors are not as sophisticated as others and may need more help than being able to go
And
online.
they also want to be on the job site as early as possible.
There you go.
I was unaware that that was a concern.
Well, I've heard a number of comments about it. It's really what, people have commented, gee, it's too bad I can't get it, have to wait till 9, I wait till 9. It's one of those things.
Robert and I'm here most time at 7, Robert's here at 7:30, we have several people that come in and ask for stuff, and we try to watch and catch contractors come in and help them. But there's a lot of stuff we can't do. And if we're back in the other office, we won't even be able to see them coming up.
just trying to think of another way to accommodate the public as opposed to just accommodating the staff.
The other side of it though is as the assessing clerk, she deals with the rest of the public as well. And so having later hours in the afternoon plays to that demographic as well.
What I suggested, and she didn't like it, was closing at the same time now, opening at 8 and stopping at 12 Friday.
Okay.
So that way she added the 4 hours to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday morning.
Saturday, Friday,
And then
afternoon.
Friday afternoon off. But she's not a morning person, so,
Well,
but it's something we should consider.
I won't say what I'm thinking.
Probably a good idea.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Motion on the minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes of July 12th, for public and non-public with one change. That change being it's governor's executive council, Janet Stevens, not county executive council.
And I'll second that with the correction.
What is her title?
Governor's executive council.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, motion is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained. Make a motion, we enter a non-public session per RSA 91-A semicolon 3(2) regarding a legal matter as well as a personnel matter.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That will conclude the public portion of this evening's meeting. Thank you very much for joining us.